Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Breakfast Club Jamboree. I think I've been recording for much longer than I thought. Anyway, we got that funk here with the usual suspects and a new addition. Brian, hello, Brian, over there. Let's say
good morning, good evening.
Who the hell are you, and why are you here? Go. Who? Drum roll.
Sorry, are you after me?
I am, as a matter of fact.
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
I know you're new.
Sorry,
at this, Brian.
I had to sort out a quick issue that I had with the audio from the stream going live suddenly coming through because I'd forgotten I had the page open. Anyway,
okay.
Who am I?
Well, to viewers who haven't been on YouTube for 15 years, who are you?
Okay. I'm Brian J 1962. I've been on YouTube since about 2009, 2010. Used to be part of the Great Debate Community when it was the Great Debate Community and not a cabal of some sort. What do I do? Currently, I'm a presenter on a internet radio station called Wolfman Radio. That's been a lot of fun. That's kept me away from YouTube. And tonight I am going to be serving the function of placebo mic.
Perfect.
So there you go.
And in the comment section, Rob Devshell makes a perfectly good point. And you know what? We've never really done this, and we might as well start the first video of 2021, right? So I'm going to interview y'all. So Rob, who the hell are you? What are you all about?
I'm Dev Shell too, motherfucker. Hell. Yeah, I'm the guy who used to wear lots of hats and make videos asking who is Dev Shell too.
Yeah.
I miss that. That was a lot of fun.
That whole era was a lot of fun.
So, yeah, did I answer your question or?
Close enough, I suppose. Right, Stu, give it to us. Who are you? What are you all about? Tell us about yourself.
Okay, well, as my day job, I'm an online English as a second language teacher, and my students are based in South Korea. I'm actually looking to get back into doing some streaming. I've been looking at Twitch on and off, and I was just on a panel this past Wednesday, which had a really a good topic and just so well managed. I really loved it. I've actually been away for a little bit because of the holidays and everything, but now with things coming down in the new year, I'm going to be back. I'm going to start getting back into regular schedule and starting to come in and hang out with y'all again.
Thank you for coming. I'm really glad to see you back.
Glad to see you back too.
Regretting this moment. Give it to me. Who are you? What are you all about?
Me? Okay, I'm Kizum. Everyone always... When they see my name, they usually think it's Kizumi, but it's Kizum. It's a mispronunciation of music backwards. If it was actually music backwards, it'd be Kizuim, and that just sounds weird. So, and then I spelled it the way I did, and in 2014, I had my name legally changed to it. So,
I didn't know that.
Still have my last name, but I've been making YouTube videos more consistently since around 2010, although I did start my account in 2006. But I do social commentary. When I do music, I do upload it to that, but I've been sort of not keeping up with making music lately.
Can I confess something? I'm super jealous of how good your voice is. You've got a great singing voice.
Oh, right on. Thanks.
Yeah.
And with voice stuff, I've been doing the voiceover work, the narration work on JCS Criminal Psychology, and every so often the job they're pretty. They want the voiceover to be perfect, so sometimes I've got to redo a bunch of stuff over and over again. But I'm really glad I've had that gig. That's been cool. And
and it's helped your channel a lot as well.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, I'm now over 11,000 subscribers. So
wow, that's like twice as many as I got. Yeah, that's great. So, Sister Danger, who are you? What are you all about?
Wow. Okay. So I didn't realize I was going to be doing the 2021 introduction. So who am I? Well, my name is Amy, but in other worlds, I also go by Fairy Princess Lolly because that's what I do when I'm not here yucking it up with you guys. I'm a professional fairy and event producer, and I guess YouTube content creator is in there with that eventy stuff. So, yes, Deb.
I'm a professional fairy too.
Not that kind of fairy.
All right. Welcome back to the show, Nathan Brendan Masters. How you doing, my friend? Tell us about yourself. Who are you? What are you all about? Nathan, are you there? It is the picture of Nathan.
It is the YouTuber formerly known as Nathan.
It is the presence of Nathan without Nathan being present.
The man behind the curtain.
Yeah, I think he didn't realize it was going to be his turn to talk yet. All right. I'm Paul. I'm Got That Funk, and this is my channel, and I'm retired. Thank you. So, yeah. Anyway, let's get chatting. Who wants to start? Last week, I made Kazoom start, and he wasn't ready for that. Sue, you've been absent for a while. Why didn't you start?
I don't know. Well, okay, I've actually got one. As you know, there's been a lot of canvassing down in Georgia right now for the election that's been the runoff that's going on there. And I've actually been watching several Twitch political streamers who have actually been gathering, and they've been actually showing what the process is, the prep and everything like that. And it sounds like they've had some pretty good results overall. And they're doing this like this whole weekend. I think it was yesterday, today, and I think tomorrow. So I'm wondering what everyone thinks about that. What do you see happening with that? Predictions?
Wow. Well, I mean, speaking for myself, I think that there's a shit show in progress, and you know, the fact is that there's Republicans making a lot of noise that the whole election is illegitimate in the first place, and depending on how hardcore they're going to go on Wednesday, I mean, you know, it's disturbing to me the number of these jerks in Congress who seem to be willing to go along with this, and we'll talk more about that because that's not Georgia. But I think the two things are so tied together, you know, what's going to happen on Wednesday and what's happening on Tuesday in Georgia. And I think the only reason that we haven't had more violence in the streets up until this point is because of the Senate race in Georgia. I think if that hadn't been looming over their heads, shit would have kicked off weeks ago. You know, that's just me. I'm paranoid though, right? Y'all know that. What does everybody else think?
I have no comments because I can't even say that I fully crawled out from under the rock that I tried to crawl super under for the holidays, because basically at Christmas, like between Christmas and New Year's, I've been trying to stay away from all of the internets as much as possible, you know,
Wow.
to do only my mandatory shows and things that I had pre-scheduled or whatever, and then it just, I don't know, read a book. So, alas, I am somewhat behind on current events today.
Fair enough.
I do like your background, though.
Thank you. Yeah, I got it for Christmas.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Hey, what did people get for Christmas?
Well, I got this, and we got, I'm sure I got something else. I got socks, of course, because I'm a guy.
You're safe from Yule Cat. Yes,
Well,
baby.
no, I got socks from my gal, and they're all very interesting. And I got 2 pairs of each design so that if I lose one, I'll still have a pair of socks. And if I lose 2, I'll still have a pair of socks. So, you know, that's just practical thinking. You know, thank God I've got a woman in my life, because I wouldn't think like that.
We did I said the Yule Cat thing because we did a Yule Cat sock exchange over on my channel, and Angel Rider actually participated in that as well, and so did Agent of Doubt. got in on that. And because the Icelandic legend is that if you don't get a piece of new clothing for Christmas, the Yule Cat, which is an enormous beastly cat which prowls the countryside, will eat you, essentially. First he'll eat your dinner and then he'll eat you, and that is just how your Christmas will go. You know, I mean, being that it's a cat, you probably just have to hang out in his belly for a while before he gacks you back up onto some lovely piece of carpet, or maybe in someone's shoe. But so we did a sock exchange to protect everybody from Yule Cat. And see, you weren't in our sock exchange, but you got protected from Yule Cat anyway because you got new clothes.
That sounds like a really, really ancient piece of lore.
It is. It is actually. It's up there with the Yule lads. It's pretty much the whole north side. We were looking for Yuletide types of stuff. So
yeah, it sort of sounds very hunter-gathery to me.
I guess I suppose it does. I thought it was fitting though for 2020 that, you know, if you didn't get your clothes, you were just going to get devoured by a terrible huge cat that roams the countryside. Well, what did the rest of you guys get? Anything?
I got this shirt that I'm wearing here, I got a few containers of de-shelled pistachios.
Oh,
and
that sounds good.
those are really good. I went through those really quick.
You got a bunch of new backgrounds too. I saw that.
Yeah, I got myself those though. I didn't receive a gift, but yeah. And I really like.
Do you just get a sheet and like dye it?
Huh?
Do you just get a sheet and like dye it or something, or what do you use? A sheet, is it? Or
No, it's an actual backdrop that I purchased. I got this one from Amazon.
Like a photography backdrop, that kind of thing.
Yes, it is. And I got these that I modified, put some holes in the ceilings and have this metal bar going across the top, and the backdrop slides right into that, and yeah.
Yeah, well, I have to admit, I love this a little too much because it's obviously very colorful, which matches all my tattoos and my whole life and personality. So, you know, I'm very pleased about it. And of course, she knew that about me. So, yeah. And for Christmas, I got her, I got us a 4K TV, and I got her a rock hammer, because when we drove to California back in September, drove through Wyoming and Utah, Nevada, and Northern California. And I'm telling you, and then we drove back through Idaho as well. And there's just so much absolutely cool geology out there. You just want to pull over and start busting rocks up, because you know there's fucking fish and leaves and fucking lizards and shit in those rocks. I know that.
What is a rock hammer? Is it literally a hammer?
It's like a hammer on one side and a pick on the other side, you know?
Oh.
The pick is pretty sharp, and you can use it to bust up. Like shale is the best thing to find fossils in, but you can find fossil in other kinds of rocks, of course. But I mean, shale. Most of the time, if you break some shale apart, if you do it long enough, do it for half an hour, you'll find some fossils. It's always. I've never broken shale apart without finding fossils.
Wow, I didn't even know that was a thing that could be done. I almost called it a weapon, but what I meant was tool.
Yeah, well, I was my mom was a geology major that she never actually finished college though, but she was a geology major in college, and so I grew up with fossils all around in bookshelves and whatever.
That's cool.
And so I got fascinated by it from a young age. And like I say, when you're driving through and you can just see all this strata everywhere and these beautiful fucking mesas everywhere, and it's just like, man, I just want a 4x4 and I want to go off road and go fucking bust rocks for a day or two, you know. And I think next summer, pandemic allowing, we might try to go to the Grand Canyon and do exactly that. So that'd be pretty cool.
I've never been to the Grand Canyon. I want to go.
Have you ever been to the Grand Canyon? Anybody else ever been? Oh, wow. Yeah, it's one of those bucket list things. I did it on a whim back in the 80s when I used to do everything on a whim. I was Mr. Spontaneous when I was in my 20s. And I just like woke up one day and said, "Hey, Ken, you want to go to the Grand Canyon?" He's like, "Yeah, all right then." And off we went. And, you know, because everybody just drives 1,000 miles, right? Just on a whim.
I did in my 20s too. I made
Yeah. I was that guy for sure. You know,
Yep.
many times. Another time when I had a $3,000 stereo in my car, right? But my car was broken down, and I said to my friend Mark, I'm like, man, I really want to go to LA. This is like midnight on a Friday night, and like, man, we're at like a 24-hour restaurant like Caro's or Denny's or something. I'm like, I really want to go to LA, but my car's broke down. He said, well, we can take my car, but the fucking stereo's broken in my car. I was like, dude, I'll go to my house right now, rip the stereo out of my car, put it in your car, and we'll drive to LA. You up for it? He's like, yeah. We go back to my house, ripped it out, put it in, didn't even take an hour to do both, and then drove his car to LA. We were in LA before 9 o'clock in the morning.
Dang. We did a similar thing like that once down to Las Vegas, and the only music that we had in the car was a cassette tape of Guar's Slaughterama. So Portland to Las Vegas, nothing but Slaughterama over and over and over and over until we got there.
And you're here to tell the tale.
Well, I mean, back in the 90s, radio was still there were still a number of independent stations. So like in the 90s, well, the early 90s anyway, you could go on a trip and not have to worry about having specific music with you. You could just keep fiddling with the radio and find something interesting the whole time.
Brother, what are you talking about? You're talking an alien language to me. I'm a DJ, right? And the idea of driving, letting someone else choose my music for me is fucking obscene.
It borders on heresy. It really does. I'm absolutely with you on that one. Totally on
You're gonna
board.
be stuck in a fucking tin can for 1,000 miles and listen to someone else choose your music? No fucking way.
Well, not the way it is now. I mean, the way it is now, everything's just a standard playlist you find on every other station because all the stations are owned by a small handful of companies. But
Right.
back then, there was actually independent radio, and you could sometimes hear some interesting stuff. There was near San Francisco, there used to be this channel that played nothing but they called it the Sample Show, and it was just these random strange clips from 50s propaganda and other music. They'd mix all this weird stuff together, and it had my friend and I just busting up for almost a half hour at some of the things they'd keep repeating. So
Sounds like one of my shows, kids.
Yeah, when I was younger, I used to live in Santa Rosa in California, and that's about an hour north of San Francisco for anybody who doesn't know. Anyway, and there used to be a radio station there. It was called KVRE, and it was the last freeform station in America, where the DJs could actually play whatever the fuck they wanted, right?
Oh, they had to actually have skills as opposed to just go.
Well, I mean, every radio
music
station
skills
since
as
at
well.
least the 60s, for the most part, most radio stations since the 60s have had a format, and the DJs have a selection of music that they have to play in a certain order. And you may have a little bit of discretion in terms of which songs you play in which order, but they have to come around in virtually a similar rotation. Some are like on 75 minutes, some are 95 minutes, some are 110 minutes, whatever. And they go around and around and around, depending on what category of hit it is, right?
Yeah.
So you don't normally, most radio stations, if you were really lucky when I was a DJ on the radio in the 80s, if you're really lucky, you got to choose 2 songs in an hour that you had basically like an elective slot where you could pick a couple songs for like oldies. You could pick an oldie and you could pick whichever oldie you wanted, right? But when I worked in, the only radio job I had in the UK was at FTP in Bristol, which no longer exists. FTP is for the people. And that was a black radio station, and we had a mandate to play 80% black artists on that radio station. And that was a free-form radio station. Other than that mandate, you could play whatever you wanted. And I've never had so much freedom as a DJ in my life, not even in a nightclub, you know what I mean? Because in a nightclub, you still have to play shit the people are going to dance to.
Right.
yeah, like I DJ in Second Life quite a bit, and in that world the place I play at is a strip club, so I can't just play anything I want, but I do try to stretch the limits quite a bit. But yeah, so I can't play stuff that's too slow because it has to be something, upbeat that maybe someone could dance to a little bit. So, but that's been fun.
Something that you can swing a pair of knickers to. Okay, got it.
I like that term. That's a fun turn of phrase. We did a similar run though, also from Stoke-on-Trent once up to Glasgow, and the only music in the car was the Pick of Destiny by Tenacious D. And so we got to listen to that for like 6 hours or 8 hours or however long that trip was, over and over. I wonder if these two trips have somehow imprinted and changed my life in ways that I don't yet know. And if much is explained.
That's actually an interesting topic that I can't believe we've never discussed on the Breakfast Club. Because when I was a young man as a DJ in the 80s, right, there was a whole bunch of, back in the 80s, for y'all who were too young to remember this era, back in the 80s, political scandals were like, is rock and roll music leading children to suicide? And it should crack have a different categorization than cocaine or blah 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 kind of shit. Those are the huge issues of the day, right? That's how Anyway, I digress. My point is,
and miners' strikes, of course.
These rock and roll artists, used to have politicians debating them in Congress and shit about labeling music and whatever. It's just, I don't know. I lost my original thought now.
Ozzy Osbourne and Dee Snider made Congress look like a bunch of idiots.
Yeah. Well,
I can actually see that for Dee Snider, but Ozzy Osbourne was always on such an enormous amount of drugs that does not speak anything well of Congress. Who's done more drugs, Ozzy Osbourne or Keith Richards?
Well, if I remember correctly, though, wasn't John Denver in on that too? I thought
John
he was
Denver.
That's what I remember finding out about.
Frank Zappa.
Yeah, because I remember when I found out John Denver of all people. Okay, he just got coolness points for even just being alongside these rock stars. I think that's pretty sweet.
I heard yesterday
John Denver.
I heard yesterday that Eddie Izzard is going to run for Parliament in the UK. Going to run for MP.
I'd probably vote for him.
Right?
Well, Eddie Izzard, I think, is becoming a she, so it's looking to do she pronouns. That's what I've seen.
He looked it up, and according to him, it is when he's in boy mode, it's he, and when he's in girl mode, it's she.
Yes, he identifies as a male lesbian.
Ah, interesting.
So that would be interesting. I wish Eddie Izzard was running for something over here, to be perfectly honest. I wish Stephen Colbert would run for things over here, but
Oh, God, I would vote for Stephen Colbert. Hell yeah.
Nathan, can you hear us?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Now we can hear you, yeah. Excellent. Okay, welcome to the show, and happy 2021 to you, mate.
Thank you. Happy 2021 to you guys, too. Sorry about that mix-up. That's just, you guys know how it goes over here with technology, with podcasts.
All right, well, Nathan, because we can't see your face, we won't be able to take any verbal cues or visual cues that you want to speak. So just interrupt, okay, bud?
Okay. All right. How you guys doing?
It's been forever since you've been here. So it's good to see you, hear you, as it were.
Good to see you guys too. I've just been kind of doing stuff, trying to stay busy, and hopefully after all this is over, I can get back into the swing of things. So that's what things are like right now. So trying to get some movies.
Thanks for all those details, Nathan. That really cleared everything up. No, seriously, though, we're glad to have you back on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Nathan, what do you think? It's been a while, man. I don't know. It must have been a couple of months since you've been on the show. What do you think about all the crazy shit that's gone down since the election, man?
At this point, it's expected. I'm not shocked by anything anymore at this point. It's either only going to get worse, or it's going to be more and more amazing. There's nothing that I'm going to look at and go, oh, that happened? No, now it's like, oh, that happened. Of course that happened. Whatever the craziest thing is, I'm just going to be like, that's going to be the thing that happens. Yeah.
But
So
isn't that a bit like terrifying that you're normalized to that level of extreme behavior? I mean, basically everyone's like anything could happen, instead of
it's
anything happen,
it's been that way. I would say since 2006. I'll tell you here in Chicago. For me, ever since the Cubs won the World Series, I'm like, anything can happen at that point. That was the introduction for me, or anything was going to happen. I knew at that point, this is going to be the year for everything. But seriously, though, it seems like since 2016, everything has just gone haywire. And even before that, with everything that was happening on YouTube and that was happening in the world, just watching it, whatever the most silliest thing was going to be, the thing that made the least sense, I was always like 50-50. Like back in the day, you would say you got a good idea that the most silliest thing wasn't going to happen. Now it's like a 50-50 chance for me. I'm like, that sounds really stupid that that's going to happen, but I'm thinking that's going to be the thing. So it's been that way for a few years now, where it's just increasingly getting worse. So hopefully it will get better, but I don't know. I don't know what's going to go down. Right now they're trying to overturn the election. I want to think that can't happen. But
all right, if you were a betting man, right, which way would you bet, and how much money would you bet on your decision?
At this point, 60-40. I would say, I want to say 70-30, but I'm thinking 60-40. I'm leaning in for I'm hoping that things work out with Biden, but I've never seen this much force against things. Before. I've just never seen this much force against an actual election. And just 2016, we were laughing at people because they were freaking out and crying because Trump got in, and we're like, hey, it's an election. Better luck next time, right? Come on. I mean, even me, I'm like, my person didn't get in. Better luck in 4 years. Now they're going to the mat with this whole thing. They're going beyond just being upset. They're taking this thing to the Supreme Court several times. And so, every election now is going to be a supposedly stolen election.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that gets me. I mean, this has gone to a ridiculous extreme where basically I saw that statement that they put out about how they're going to vote against certifying the election, and they're like there's so many allegations of wrongdoing. Like, yeah, from you, motherfucker, from you. You guys made this shit up wholesale with no evidence to back it up. Even the judges you guys put in are like, nah, this is horseshit. Get this out of my face. And so that's why I keep telling people whenever I hear like, oh, well, the Democrats shouldn't do this or shouldn't do that because then the Republican reaction will be they'll do something extreme. I'm like, no, they're already doing it. They're already doing everything. They're literally doing everything possible to literally usurp the will of the voters. They are literally trying to turn us into a failed state, to turn us into an autocracy. So this thing of worrying about what they might do, fucking they're doing it now. Pay the fucking attention because they're already doing it now.
What happened? The 11 senators that are planning to object, they should all be charged with sedition. What they're doing is a violation of law.
I'll add to that real quickly that if you're a senator of the recent batch who just got reelected or elected into the Senate in 2020, and you are going to stand there and say the election was illegitimate, that must therefore include your own, and you shouldn't be seated in the Senate for that reason, and therefore you shouldn't get a vote either.
And on top of this, I don't know if you heard what Gomer said today after his case was thrown out, that he's literally telling people to take to the streets and commit acts of violence. That is literal sedition. Everything else you can say it's figuratively seditious. No, this is under the legal definition. He's literally telling people to take up arms against the government. That's fucking sedition. And by the the 14th Amendment, he should not be seated because it's illegal for him to be seated now, because it specifically says if you cannot be seated as a member of Congress if you are taking up arms or basically acting seditious against the government.
And I quickly want to tell Tommy from the Bronx to go fuck himself. So, Tommy from the Bronx, go fuck yourself. No, the Dems didn't try everything for 4 years. No, the sitting president broke the law, and he was brought up on impeachment as a constitutional remedy. That is the way that the country works. If you don't like the way our country works, if you don't like the constitutional process, get the fuck out.
Well, get the fuck out!
I'm sorry, I have to add to that as well. I don't want Tommy to fuck off, of course, because I love Tommy, but you're going to complain about the Democrats wasting taxpayer dollars? Motherfucker, are you kidding? I mean, Trump spent how much money golfing?
Well, how
many Melania and Trump Tower? I mean, it goes on and on and on.
How many Benghazi investigations did the Republicans have, all of which found no wrongdoing? Well, that's 4 in the Senate. That's not counting what they did in the House.
Right.
So I think there was 11. So they did all these investigations, and even when their own investigation cleared everybody, they kept having more. So you want to talk waste of money and political theater? Don't even start. Right?
I would just like to say, although I personally don't have a horse in this race, Republican, Democrat, POTUS is POTUS. But I am married to an American. So, I do feel a tie to the country, to the nation. And what happens in the United States is important for the rest of the world, because where you lead, a lot of us tend to follow. So what is happening right now over there in the United States, to actually show to the rest of the world that you genuinely mean that no one person is above the law, there are people from the previous administration that need to be held accountable for their actions, up to and including Donald Trump himself. Otherwise, the world is going to go to shit in a handbasket.
Right.
Well, I mean,
and I'm glad you.
go ahead, Nathan, go ahead.
I'm glad you said it that way, because I was just about to ask, whatever happened to the shithole countries? It looks like we're about to become one of those shithole countries that Donald Trump likes to talk about from the way our election is going right now, mainly because of him. He just can't let it go.
Well, and it goes to show you too that okay, I've not liked the Republicans for a very long time, but I always felt like, going back to the 80s and Reagan and all that at some point, they believed in America, they believed in the process, and they wanted to make America better. They just, from my perspective, weren't doing the right things to do that. But I never felt that they were like vile and evil and seditious and treasonous. And these fuckers, it's clear they don't care. Even Mitch McConnell has more integrity than these. Actually, it's up to 12 now senators that are going to vote against certification. So when Mitch McConnell's lapping you on the track of integrity, you done fucked up.
I am shocked. For the last 4 years, I at least had some respect for the Republican Party. I did like a lot of the values and things they supposedly stood up for. And keyword there, supposedly. And now we see that they don't stand up for any of them, including the patriotism and all the stuff that they pretend to, the Constitution and all that stuff. That's just out the window. I mean, why pretend anymore?
All they care about is power. and getting getting basically appealing to that base, getting themselves reelected in the next cycle. So, and of course Hawley, he wants to run, so he thinks if he makes the Trump base happy, he'll have a chance next time.
Yeah, it's funny that a lot of the Republicans will try to claim that, just people on the right, I won't say just Republicans, just people on the right try to claim that the left, all they want is power. And it's just like, are you looking at yourselves? Are you looking in the mirror?
Yep. Everything's projection.
Well, that's the thing. And even to and what they do is they'll grab, obviously the left isn't perfect. What they'll do is they'll grab anything that the left does and then try to magnify it as if it's happening. I keep running into people that keep trying to bring up Portland, Portland. I'm like, no, basically everything in Portland's contained to a few square blocks, and it was actually quieting down until New Year's. But then they'll ignore, the right wingers that go around shooting people and right.
I'd just like to make a quick point. When we're talking about the left and the right, the right wing and the left wing in the United States are different from elsewhere in the world. Your left wing is actually considered fairly right wing in comparison to global politics. Just wanted to make that clear.
I keep hearing that, but whenever I compare the Democrats to the Tories are still to the right of the Democrats.
Yeah, but your Democrats are to the right of most what I would call socialist parties.
Oh, for sure.
And that's not going anywhere near as left as communism.
Oh no, not at all. Not at all.
We are fairly conservative. And last time I was on here, I brought that up. We're generally a conservative country. Even our left wingers are generally conservative. Well, I mean, I'm talking about not the far left people, but a lot of us, like myself, who I'm a Democrat, but I
wish I had heavy metal hair so I could shake it all about.
Every Democrat that I know is conservative. I do not know far left liberal Democrats. And all of my friends are Democrats, and none of them are liberal. I mean, it's the kind of liberal stuff that we've seen in the past.
Here's the thing, Nathan. Here's the thing. I've been wanting to get in because I wanted to say something addressing what Brian said, but right now, Nathan. Here's the thing. Most of the more progressive policies, when you ask people if they support it or not, about 70% of the country, not just Democrats, of the country, approximately 70% support very left positions. Americans in general, as individuals, as people, are not very conservative. We are actually very liberal. The problem is we vote conservative because it's the only options that we're given. And when we're given options that are further left, we get scared because there are words that have a lot of taboo attached to them. Yeah. So when Bernie says I'm a democratic socialist, everybody runs for the hills, even though everyone supports what he wants.
Right.
It's there's no correlation between what the word is and then what properties go along with it. Nobody, if you were to ask those same people, do you support these types of programs? And they'd all be like, yes. And then you would say, do you support socialism? And they'd all be like, dear God, no. And that's because they don't know what the word socialism means. And the reason they don't know is because our media F's it up for everybody.
Well, it's not just the media. I mean, it's the right wing in this country has had an organized campaign over the last 60 years of making those words toxic, and it's been deliberate. It wasn't like an accident; it just happened. I mean, they did this on purpose. That was their goal: is to make those words toxic and poisonous, so everyone would be afraid of them and run from them, so that they could get their way. I mean, that's the thing, and that's one of the things that does drive me nuts about the left. Whatever manifests as the left in our country is that. Basically, we because we are more diverse, or it's harder for us to get together. And so what ends up happening when we don't have a long game, because everybody gets proprietary about their issues. Whereas the right wing, they've had this plan in place and literally started before Barry Goldwater. So you're talking like 1960. They've been working toward this whole time. So you have 60 years of them working toward this. Starts actually in the 50s with the John Birch Society. So basically, so what ends up happening is they show up, whether they, a lot of people voted for Donald Trump on the right wing that didn't like him at all, but because he's on their side, he's the one that's going to get them the things they want, to get them the judges they want, get them, the right wing policies that they want. And even if they didn't like a specific thing, is they still go. Whereas on the left, we have this very take my toys and go home and throw them out of the pram kind of mentality, because we all get proprietary about our issues, and so it's been literally driving me nuts for 30 or 40 years at this point.
Well, I mean,
slight lull in the conversation for a second, just to welcome to the show to Tommy from the Bronx, who has
Tommy.
Club Jamboree
Hey, Tommy.
since like April, I think. So welcome back to the show, Tommy. Can you hear us? Uh-oh.
I think he's having the same problem I had.
He might be having the same problem. I'm going to take him off and put him back on real quick.
A case of the McMasters.
What was Kazam? I think Kazam.
Hey, Tommy, can you hear us?
Well, something I just wanted to say real quick is that there are different definitions of the word socialism, and when some people when people are talking about what a lot of Europe pushes forth as socialism is quite different than the dictionary definition of socialism. I mean, the dictionary definition of socialism is about replacing the ownership of the means of production with public ownership or government ownership, and so a lot of people get scared of when they think of socialism, they think of the dictionary definition, but
right.
So,
and the funny thing about that, the funniest thing about that to me anyway, is that the dictionary definition of socialism, to my awareness, hasn't really ever been tried in practice. Not on a fully comprehensive national scale.
Yeah, no, never.
Right before I moved to the UK, the utilities were national ownership, but that's not quite the same thing as the workers owning them, because they were owned and operated in public trust by the government.
Well, the workers owning them would be communists, actually.
Okay, so it's not that there's different definitions of socialism. It's like different flavors of socialism. It's kind of what it is. It's just not that it's a different definition. It's just a different kind.
Well, that's right. A friend of mine pointed out to me this morning, reminding me, that there's actually a difference between democratic socialism and social democracy.
Right, exactly.
And actually, Bernie is not a democratic socialist; he's a social democrat.
Right. And I think a lot of people in this country who say that they're democratic socialists are actually social democrats. I'm a social democrat. And Brian J., which you were saying earlier about the U.S., here's what's scary. And it should be scary for the entire world. The danger is that the U.S. collapses, and it's dangerous for everybody because it'll plunge the world into like a new dark ages. It'll plunge forget about it. Money, research, all kinds of shit will just dry up. And it sounds like melodramatic, but the planet is kind of hanging in the balance here. The well-being of everyone on this world is hanging in the balance, and that orange motherfucker, for his own personal gratification, is putting everyone in jeopardy. Everyone.
Actually,
but I do want to address one thing when we were talking about when we were talking about people being conservative. A lot of times those ideas, when they're pushed to people, they're considered just good ideas, as opposed to where it's like, okay, like I'm saying, most of the people I know, would be considered conservative based on their views. But yeah, when you talk to them about things like national health care, most people will say, yeah, I'm down for that. And of course, when you say that's a socialist thing, then they get worked up. But there has to be a way to point out the fact that, hey, like most people in most countries in the world, I mean, most, in the West, they have this. This is not something, and I know everybody's going to say, well, this is America. There are things that we can do that are smart and make sense, but the country, it won't plunge the country into some kind of socialist. And I'll tell you something funny. I was actually a Bernie supporter. I actually wanted Bernie to get in. And it's going to be actually kind of funny. I supported Bernie because he was a millionaire. So I was like, he can't be that much of a socialist. So yeah, I'll kind of get behind it. But there is a thing where people in America are fearful of socialism. And going back to 2012, leading into 2016, that was a thing where everybody was kind of afraid of it because everything you were seeing was very far left. And then everything went very far right. And it's like, oh my God, what the hell is going on? No, we didn't want things to go far right. We wanted to get back to the middle. We wanted it to fall back in the middle. We didn't want to go far right.
I'm sorry, Nathan. I don't remember anything in my. I'll be 50 this year. I don't remember anything in my life ever in this country being far left. Nothing ever anywhere.
Well, at least not in government. At least not in government, anyway.
Right.
Not
I'm talking about what people were seeing. What people were seeing as far as, especially here on YouTube, on Twitter. Twitter is trash. Twitter is probably the worst thing that has happened to everything. Where people tend to think that one of the reasons that you don't see me on Twitter a lot is because if I'm not promoting something, I'm like, because your views really do get skewed on Twitter because you start thinking that people are only either far left or far right, to the point where even if you have very moderate opinions, people are going to come after you because they're going to say you're this or you're that. And you're seeing, that's the only thing you're seeing. And of course, Facebook plays in there, YouTube to a certain extent, but at least you have a certain amount of variation on YouTube. Whereas in Twitter, it's just you say these things, and then of course you got the people who are doing the hot takes, right? You got them. Some of that they don't even believe some of that stuff, and it's just pushing whatever narrative makes the money or gets the views.
Well, which in your opinion, and I want this answer from the whole group if possible, which is worse for our culture as far as its influence on culture, Twitter or Facebook?
Facebook.
I'd say Twitter.
Yeah, I'd
probably go. I'd lean towards Twitter myself.
Yeah, I mean, because the problem is that at least you can put a long screed on Facebook with nuance and all sorts of things. Twitter, it was up to 280 characters. I mean, it's still stream of consciousness. It's still, and it kind of. I mean, people have a tendency to do it anyway, but it kind of promotes the mentality of being very simplistic because, of course, you have to boil complicated things down in very simplistic language, which, by the way, is the reason why, even though when you talk about the issues without the labels, people in this country, 70% are for liberal ideas, but they vote the other way because right-wing ideas are simplistic, and that's why they appeal to that weaker brain. And so they're very easy to sum. Think about the argument that's been going on now about the slogans about defund the police and Black Lives Matter, and I think how much wasted time there's been on the slogans versus whatever. But every time I challenge people, I'm like, well, give me something that's better. I'm more than happy to change the label if it doesn't suit, and they come up with this convoluted, chunky, clunky piece of shit. I'm like, yeah, that's not a slogan. That's a diatribe. That doesn't work,
But here's the thing, Joe. Facebook has a documented history of swaying entire populations. There are demographics.
Its reach is huge. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, its reach and its power. I mean, there's been genocides that have been attributed to Facebook. Facebook moves governments. Facebook, the power and the influence behind Facebook is unmatched by anything on social media.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a shit show. Absolutely. Twitter works individuals, but as far as culture, Facebook is one of the most powerful forces I think that exists right now.
Well, I also think nobody goes on Twitter to post their manifesto before shooting up a school. So, like those things happen. I mean, when people live stream, and they're gonna live stream the horrible video of us beating up this person because we think it's hilarious. That goes onto Facebook. So, and I
the manifesto. I want the manifesto right on Twitter. Imagine that. Okay, I am treating all these people. Send. Because I just can't handle send. Send.
One thing that's ironic about Facebook is that if you recall 4 or 5 years ago, because obviously, it started off, I guess, really MySpace was the first really big social media platform. And then like first younger people went to Facebook and then older people went to Facebook. And then for a while, Facebook was almost kind of a laughing stock. What was, that's like, Gen X and boomers and, all the hip people are off on Twitter and Instagram and all these other places. But as it turns out, I mean, I don't deny that Facebook got an enormous reach. So it's kind of funny though that it was kind of berated as kind of like this, nonsensical, old fuddy-duddy location, but actually it's got a lot more power than that.
But that could probably be the reason it's got so much power, because that's where the older people are. That's where the people who have the money and the will to do this stuff. That's where they are. Which I didn't even know Facebook had that much. I mean, I knew they had the reach, but I didn't know that they were responsible for that kind of stuff. Because
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's. Because older people are there, I never thought about the fact that because I kind of got away from Facebook too. So I don't know. YouTube is pretty much the only thing I'm really doing right now. So,
I think it's a good observation, Brendan, that the fact that it is older, because really when it comes right down to it, and as Bernie has found out sadly, that you can't depend on young people for political action because they just their activity is limited. They don't actually end up showing up on election day.
Yeah, they show up to a lot of protests, but not to actually vote.
Right.
Yeah, I'm glad the discussion kind of moved on a bit before I gave my answer, because I was going to say I think they're both as bad as each other, but for different reasons. And the discussion that you guys have just had just exemplifies my reasoning as to why I'd say they are as bad as each other, but for different reasons. Twitter does tend to screw with individual minds, individual heads, but Facebook, that tends to change the playing field. And yeah, they are equally dangerous, but for different reasons. Plus, Facebook does some really insidious stuff with its data reaping, and there's that whole Cambridge Analytica stuff that interfered with both Brexit and the 2016 election and all of that. So yeah, Facebook is wide-reaching.
Yeah, I think because of its reach, and mainly it's probably a bit worse in terms of its overall influence on culture. But it's not just its political influence; it's also the personal. Like, I'm really glad that there was no Facebook when I was going through high school. Just as an example, I wouldn't want to have to navigate why didn't you like my picture culture, any of that, and that whole mindset, which typically, but not exclusively, belongs to a younger mindset. But I'm really glad that I didn't have to do that or raise my kids during that time. My kids were already internet savvy by the time social media started. They already knew, not to put shit on the internet that you're not, that you don't want everyone in the fucking world to see, and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, I think what Brian said about Twitter can fuck with individual minds, that's really spot on, Brian. Because I mean, regular old people, with hardly any subscribers like me, could potentially get dogpiled for criticizing a celebrity,
Right. Yep.
And I don't know. I would love to think that I would be impervious to that kind of thing. But Rob, you've been through dogpiling. You know what it's like, and it's not you're not numb to it, even no matter how you try to rise above it.
I was, I mean, I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. Most likely, it's the love triangle, that whole thing. That was a shit show. But I also insulted Boy George on Twitter. And his fans came after me for days and days and days. And he blocked me, the fucking cunt. But
what is happening right now?
That's what it's for, though, Dev. That's what it's for.
Boy George insulted a friend of mine who is on YouTube. I don't know if you heard of Gay Family Values.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Boy George insulted him, so I got involved because I'm just that kind of a person when I'm online on Twitter.
Oh, right. So you inserted yourself. Okay.
Yeah. Well, so yes, I was part of a dog pile, I guess. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, see, that's the thing. That's like for me, the Twitter is because it's very much of like the schoolyard, and I mean and it's so bizarre to me that like. You say you criticize a celebrity or a celebrity criticizes somebody else, and how like 30,000 people will just jump on somebody. That's like a few years back when people were going after Steve Shives and criticizing him for having bots auto. Dude, you've never had 40,000 people attack your Twitter account all in the same day. So of course you don't need a bot because no one knows who the fuck you are. But once everybody knows who you are, it can be really ugly. I guess I would say that Twitter probably has more impact culturally as far as like pop culture, and Facebook has more influence politically.
And plus, the media seems to hang out on Twitter. It's funny. The media seems to hang out on Twitter, but they have groups on Facebook. So they're using all these platforms.
Well, the media still doesn't understand social media. I remember a few years ago where it was like Wolf Blitzer, and they went to Twitter, and he's just reading shit off of Twitter. Like, dude, if we wanted to read Twitter, we could just go read fucking Twitter. We wouldn't be watching CNN.
And this is actually kind of a good thing. Who finally began to understand how social media works? Fast food restaurants. It took them a long time, especially McDonald's, but they finally stopped putting ridiculous like ads on Twitter. I don't know how many times you got to get burned before you stop sticking your head in the fire. If you look at their social media accounts now, they're fun. It's all goofy. They all goof on each other. And that's great. If that's the way they want to use their social media, I think that makes their companies look good. And they're not getting like dogpiled for saying stupid shit.
Yeah.
But like McDonald's, how many times did they end up in trouble when having to apologize after millions of people attacked their site?
I literally pretty much only go to Twitter when I'm super bored late at night and I just want to like troll the interwebs, because all I ever end up looking at are crazy fundamentalists making all kinds of religious comments that are insane, and it just going, wow, I can't believe people actually think this. Like some of the things they say, like the female's regime makes the shape of the male's penis that she's with. Like it says that in the Bible. Like, what are you? Are you insane? Like people post the craziest crap, and I just, I don't know.
I want to say I think some of those people are trolls, but then again,
no. When it comes to fundamentalists, you can never tell. But to Paul, to point you said before too about how like, well, why did you not like my picture? Just this morning, I unfriended somebody because I don't really know them. They friended me because of. You saw that they friended me in the first place because I had commented on one of PZ Meyer's Facebook posts, and so they sent me a friend. And I usually don't accept friend requests from random people that I don't know because they're always trouble. And And so they posted some real defeatist bullshit yesterday. It was like, well, you know, it was one of these things. Well, yeah, Trump's gone, but Biden's almost as bad. Like, fuck you. And I basically said, look, I think this article is just sour grapes. And she's like, well, I don't think so. I'm like, bye, you're gone. And so then she challenged me this morning, like, why'd you unfriend me? And I'm like, and she's like, because of that article? And I'm like, yeah, because I don't have fucking time in my life for that kind of bullshit. I just don't. And, you know, and I don't owe you a fucking explanation. And then before she had a chance to reply back, I blocked her because I was just like, fuck you. And the thing is, and looking at her picture, I mean, she's probably in her 60s. Like, really? Like, why'd you unfriend me? Like, grow the fuck up. Tons of people have unfriended me, and I don't care. And I've blocked and unfriended tons of people, and I still don't give a fuck.
Man, I'm thinking about last night, someone on Facebook, or someone I've known for quite a few years on Facebook, said that was trying to get everyone to delete their account on MeWe. MeWe is a competitor to Facebook, but they don't censor. So they allow people that are on the far right or even on the far left. They allow anyone to say anything, and they're like, "I'm not going to support a company that doesn't censor people on the far right." And I'm going, "Well, that's not what the platform wasn't designed to be far right. They're just allowing, you know, they're just allowing for anyone to say anything." And I mean, some of the people that are associated with the person who said to block all this stuff, they're upset that Facebook will delete groups that contain any sort of nudity, right? This is one of my LGBT friends, and yet they're upset that there's a site that doesn't censor. And I'm like, well, do you realize that the censorship thing kind of goes both ways? And that's weird.
Nobody ever realizes that. Everybody only wants their stuff to be uncensored. That's why Minds is considered a neo-Nazi site, as well as it was another one that was coming out, and it was also immediately called a neo-Nazi site simply because their whole thing was, we don't censor either side, and that right there will stop you from becoming the next Twitter and or Facebook, because everybody will dogpile you and say, well, this person's on their site. Well, yeah, but that person's on everybody else's site too. It's just that they don't get censored over there.
Is it the actual censoring that they oppose, that they're objecting to, or is it the inconsistency in censoring on Facebook? Because I tell you what, Facebook will remove a nipple, but if you want to go to some chick's place where she's got basically a piece of dental floss up her hoo-ha, and that's what's front and center for you to see, we call that close, and it's cool for her to have that, right? So I mean, I don't object to either one. I do kind of object though to the fact that Facebook will censor one but not the other.
Right.
Once you get to the nipple, that's pushing it just a bit too far there, lady. It's a bit too far.
I'm just gonna get a nipple hat. I'm getting a nipple hat. That's it.
There's just a couple of points of that I think worth commenting on. First is, freedom of speech does not come bundled with freedom from consequences 2.0. So whatever you post and wherever you post it, yeah, you're going to get people reacting in a multitude of ways to your expressing of your own self. And the second thing, when it comes to online platforms, they are corporate entities, and they have duties to their shareholders to stay in business. They also have the inherent right to control what goes on their platform, because that represents them as the company's front face. So there are a lot of decisions that go on with regards what can and cannot be expressed on those sites, that quite frankly, my freedom of speech, sorry, that does not actually apply. So shut the fuck up and go somewhere else where you can post what you want to post.
Right, and in fact, that reminds, and Brian, of course, you having been in radio for a long time, you've encountered that too, because you're working for entities that are non-governmental, and then it's the same thing. The radios, you may have the right to say something over the air, but if the people who own the station say no, you can't.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
1A is between the people and the government. Is Facebook the government? No, it is a business. Therefore, no 1A, and you and your free speeches can.
Yeah, my only gripe about Facebook is also the inconsistency. When I've seen like somebody will post something that many people would identify as hate speech, and people flag it and it doesn't get removed. They said, "Oh, this doesn't violate." Even it's like, "Well, we should round up the niggers and kill them," and for some reason that doesn't get knocked as hate speech. But then somebody will quote that, and then they get nailed. I'm like, well, wait a minute. How am I getting gigged for quoting something and saying I don't like that somebody said this, but the thing that I'm quoting didn't get cut?
Oh, I'm sorry. I got suspended on Facebook for 30 days because I quoted. Actually, I didn't even quote it. I actually posted a screenshot of something my son said, and it was, "Girls aren't real. They're like birds." 30 days I got suspended for that.
That's crazy.
Days.
Did you hear about what happened to BubbleCon? BubbleCon was this Southern comic book convention, a pop culture convention, and they had a group. They were promoting, and Facebook kicked them off because they had Chuck Norris there, and their only excuse, from what I hear, was Chuck Norris is a conservative white male. That was it. And people were like, okay, but you have all this other real crazy stuff going on. And this is where you draw the line? Chuck Norris?
Joel Osteen has a Facebook account.
Quintaka told me I was wrong, guys.
What do you guys think about when people are forced to, if people who don't have a Facebook are made to get a Facebook account in order to get a job? You can't, because a lot of jobs, they want to check your Facebook, and if you don't have one, they find that automatically suspicious. What the fuck?
I find that
Never heard of it.
Yeah, like I said, I block my employees and business associates because, one, I don't want them to see what I say, and I'm not interested in what they have to say.
Right, fair enough. Hey, last year on Black Mirror, there was only 3 episodes in last year's season of Black Mirror. In the middle episode, even though it came out in 2019, they very cleverly put the date 2018 in the lower left-hand corner. 2018 London, it says. And if you guys that follow Black Mirror, I don't know, but basically it's all just slightly into the future and what might go wrong if we let technology go too far this direction or that direction. The fact that they dated it in 2018, right off the bat, when I was watching it, I was going, why would they do that? But by the end of the episode, you know why they did it. Because everything that happens in that episode, we're already past that. We're already past that now. So instead of looking at the future and go, ooh, spooky, 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 it's like, no, this could happen now. Basically, in the episode, I'm not going to give you the whole plot away, but suffice to say that the people who ran the social media companies knew more about what was going on in the crime than the cops did. They knew more and they knew it quicker than the cops did. And we all have personality profiles on us by a number of different companies now. And they can probably tell the cops whether or not you might have done it if you're a suspect. And I'm very curious to know what the laws are and where the boundaries are in terms of how much information is disclosable without a warrant.
Well, the thing is, if it's posted on a publicly accessible forum, then it's fair game for the police. However, I can tell you, well, at least the Philadelphia police are not using it because my nephew was murdered a year ago, October, and the fucking murderer was posting and bragging about it on Twitter and Instagram with geotags, basically pointing out exactly where he fucking was within 5 meters. And it took them, like 8 months or 9 months to catch up with the guy. And he's like literally like every day, oh, I'm here, I'm over here, and nothing.
Chicago would love to have criminals that stupid. We would love that here. Cause goodness knows our cops would be like that guy. Yeah, okay, come on. That's freaking ridiculous.
So okay, so here's what's creepy about Facebook and knowing things. About a week ago, I started getting ads on Facebook for women's panties and sports bras. So
good luck with that.
Oh, Nathan, you don't know. You don't know.
No, they track everything. They track over from Amazon is real big with it too. Amazon will track your ass from Facebook to Instagram to YouTube. They will track you hard, and anything you're doing. If like I look at something on eBay or look on Amazon for something, yeah, that's it right there.
Right.
Yeah, as somebody who spent quite a large portion of his professional life working in software and hardware and networking, the first thing that you should do when you install a browser is to turn off all of the tracking cookies, turn off all of the advertising cookies, turn off everything bar the vital for functionality cookies. That's step one. Step two is be very vigilant as to which links you follow and the veracity of the websites that you do internet commerce with. And thirdly, when it comes to VPN usage, yeah, there are pros and cons to it. One of the biggest cons is that it protects your identity. It doesn't. All of the data that you interact with the website that you're visiting is still accessible to third parties. So, yeah, be alert, be aware, and be very vigilant in your internet activities because, yes, you will be tracked all over the place, but there are things that you can do to protect yourself.
Well, one of the things that really kind of freaked me out was there's a client, one of the operators, or actually one of the maintenance guys, one of the customers that I deal with. The only interaction I've ever had with him is email. I use Outlook for my work email, and I use a completely different client for my personal email. I got him as a friend suggestion on Facebook, even though I've never looked for him. We have no friends in common, but clearly Facebook was checking my Outlook to see he was either directly checking Outlook or it was actually watching the packets leaving my computer, which is even more scary.
Right.
And said, "Oh, Rocky, you should know you know him, right? Here he is on Facebook." And I was like, "Oh shit!" And that was actually when I started like proactively looking for people and blocking them when I started doing business with them.
Yeah, that's likely to be ISP selling third-party data.
I actually saw in my friend request on Facebook some guys that I hooked up with.
Yep, I recently had a friend that a similar thing happened to them too, where a person that they're just not connected with in any way other than have seen that person like face to face, and then down like a week later started getting, oh, you might know this person on Facebook, and it just tripped them out. They're like, I'm not connected to this person. I don't have friends connected to this person. I just like saw them, in person, and that's it. And now suddenly, somehow, somewhere in that whole thing, so that information has been promulgated, so I don't know.
There used to be a theory when I was a kid that everybody is something like 6 steps of separation away from everybody else.
Oh, Kevin Bacon. 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, 6 degrees of separation. And the internet has only made that distance shorter.
Yep. Which can be helpful for sometimes when you're in filmmaking like I am. That can be sometimes helpful, but I can understand.
I think with regards to what Goth was saying about the whole companies going and looking at your Facebook. So I've actually, not myself, but from friends, I've experienced that kind of in two different ways. One is that they're in the like corporate professional world where they're working at, Amazon or Microsoft or Facebook or whatever, and they have their account, but they keep it locked down with some things to show that would be acceptable for, just publicly acceptable pictures of your cats or your family or whatever, right? And then the rest is all friends only, or they have a Facebook account completely locked down that only friends can see everything. And there's just like a profile picture. And then the other side of that is the industry, the showbiz industry, which you were just commenting on, Nathan, where they specifically look at this because they want to see, especially if it's not like Hollywood, if it's more independent movie making or models or whatever that aren't just hugely famous already. Companies that are looking to hire you want to see what your Facebook following, your Instagram following is, and some of them even have a requirement that it be at a certain number before they'll hire somebody, because they are counting on you to post these things, the approved stuff that you're allowed to post, pictures from behind the set or whatever it is, to your followers, so that your followers will go follow the company that has hired you. And so they only want to get people that are basically what I would say qualify as kind of media influencers, right? You're not a huge guy, but you're not me, right?
and on top of that, it's not just that, but even in comic books, like back in the day, when you make a comic book, you send it to Diamond. If Diamond likes it, they put it in. I mean, Diamond at one point just started they liked everything, and they would just put it in the catalog. Now you have a form to fill out, and they ask you, how many followers do you have on certain platforms? And if you don't have enough followers, that could be a problem for you getting your book in stores. So yeah, it's a lot of change. I didn't even know that until I think last year I knew that. And I didn't know that until then.
It kind of irritates me too, because I ultimately feel like that is these companies' ways of basically shelling out the expense and responsibility of them marketing onto the people that onto the person that they're hiring, right? And so they're essentially getting free marketing through you that you're not being paid for, right? Because I guarantee you that anybody that has an Instagram account and does something like in the professional sphere outwardly, right? Like has a professional outward face, that you are doing things like paying for advertisements to go back to your store or to go to your YouTube or whatever link you want people to go to. You're buying those little things. You're not getting paid back for that, right? And then a company comes along and wants you to have a big enough following that you've paid for out of your pocket, and they're not giving you any, compensation for that. So I kind of dislike, I feel like it's dirty a little bit, but
one of the reasons I dislike how brand name clothes is because very often you're basically advertising for the clothes you're wearing. You're not wearing clothes for your own sake necessarily, or you are, but it's also just conveniently blazoned across your chest or wherever on the label. And
logo feces as
labels person, but most of my life that's because I was poor. Yeah.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, George Carlin referred to it as logo feces.
Just as an interesting aside, there seems to have parallels to the ancient practice of apprenticeship, where if you wanted one of those high-paying, social standing professions, you would literally give up years of your life to work free labor for a master, an artisan, and after, in some cases, decades, only then would you be allowed to go out and make a living under your own legitimate namesake.
like an internship.
Very much, yeah. Internship is another modern take on that particular mechanism, yes.
I feel like at least with an internship, though, you have much more of a notion that when you're done with it, it is going to contribute very valuably. I can't say that word. Valuably.
You were right first time. Valuably.
Wow, I really didn't know how to say that word. That it will contribute like that to whatever you're doing. Whereas the whole Instagram, followers on Facebook, whatever. Yeah, I mean, there is no direct correlation. I don't think that can be pointed to very well.
Well, see, the thing about it is, if you're smart, you can. Okay, like pre 2014, I was doing very well on YouTube as far as filmmaking was going. I was making my own movies and people were watching them and they were like, hey, yeah, that's good stuff, And then there's a lot of people on Instagram that can turn their fame. If you're an attractive woman, you can turn that into actual cash. Even on YouTube, I mean, you can get on all these.
Nathan, have you ever considered turning into an attractive woman to see if you can make cash that way?
If I were an attractive woman, I'd rule the world right now. It would be like ridiculous.
You mean like Melania Trump? Oh.
Yeah. Probably. If she got on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, I guarantee you, Melania Trump could indeed run the world.
I'm pretty sure she just got on Air Force One and was wearing a swimsuit.
I mean, what?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it was Air Force One, but I've seen pictures of her wearing, I don't know. I mean, swimsuits. There's nothing crazy about them except for they show what swimsuits show, so you can see side boob or some crap. And then she's like on an airplane, and I'm like, man, she doesn't need to get on Twitter. She gets on Air Force One.
But I mean, like, if she wants to become an influencer, I guarantee you, and just her being who she is, yeah, that's money in the bank right there. If she wanted to do that, I doubt she wants to do that though. His daughter does that kind of stuff, doesn't she? I mean, and she like a fashion. Is she into fashion or something? When she's not pretending to work at the White House.
Yes, Ivanka Trump does have her own fashion line of some sort, but I'm not into that. I actually try to, but I think the vast majority of anything clothing like I bought, at least this season, was all. I tend to buy my stuff handmade if I can, handmade or secondhand. Like I almost never ever shop anything that is firsthand, because I don't like it for a great number of reasons, but I don't know, it grates against me as horribly cliche and boring. So I like to,
I think the best.
I'm curious if we can get off of like the social media conversation, because I think they're watching us.
I feel like we're being watched. Well, one thing, and listening to us too. One thing that's been said and it's a term that drives me nuts, and no one here invented it, so I'm not mad at anyone here in the chat. But like when I hear the term influencer, it grates on my spine like a rusty tuna can lid being drug up and down my spine, because a lot of people that get called influencers, like they don't actually know anything. Like they're just like, okay.
They're human billboards.
Yeah, there's this channel I watch. It's two young Brits it's Joel and Leah. They're nice young. They're like in their mid-20s. They're cool, and they do like Britain versus the America and the differences between the two cultures, and they're cool. But they were referring to themselves as influencers, and I'm like, but you don't know anything. But like I watch you for entertainment, and you're nice and you're pleasant, but you're not influencing anybody or anything.
They influence people to buy stuff. That's the key. Yeah. That's what the importance is right there. Buying stuff. If you can do that, that's where the money's at. You gotta get that. Like that's why I do. I do tech reviews. When I get some good tech, I do a review. People love it, and they're like, "Hey, what is this?" They love it.
So, for instance, while we've been speaking, actually, it was earlier on in the broadcast. If people were paying attention, they would have noticed I was painting my nails, and see, I don't know if you can see the color difference, but see, this one is what I just did. That's my natural color. See, it's like this pink. That's what I was doing. So, if I were an influencer, while we were talking, I would have said I'm using Opie. And the color is, I don't even fucking remember. But, this is really good. And then maybe somebody would go buy it. Then I would be an influencer. So,
Well, especially with some of them, like especially on Twitter, there's like supposedly like political influencers. I'm like, I wouldn't take voting advice from fucking anybody on the internet. I mean that's like it's just so bizarre. And
it's ridiculous. And there are political influencers on Twitter. It's ridiculous.
And, even here, okay, we're talking and there's people watching us, but I mean, no one gives a fuck what I think. Anyone who watches me is just waiting to hear me, slam somebody and say something nasty about somebody. That's why it's surely entertainment value.
I swear we're going into Wayne's World mode with this. This is like Wayne's World. You remember the scene where they do the whole product placement thing?
Yes.
As soon as they put up the Doritos thing.
I will say this. I'll say this.
What do you mean?
I used to get free stuff. When I was doing movies, I got to a point where I could write companies and say, hey, if you give me this, I'll put it, like, I actually had product placement. It's like they wouldn't pay me for it, but they would give me stuff that I was using, and I could use that. I could use those numbers to get stuff. And even today, I can do it when I get back into that mode. So yeah, that's the thing. They're looking for that kind of stuff.
I suddenly think of Angel Writer's headphones have the colors of Maybelline's Great Lash Mascara.
Oh God, I didn't think about that. That's good, Kazoo.
As a complete aside, because we have since there's two Quintinkas, and one of them is like the troll, and the other one's like seems to be reasonably cool. So no one's maybe Paul will get this reference. I doubt anybody else. Well, Brian too. Brian's old like me. We call the cool one brown Quintinka and call the other one green Quintinka. Brian got it. There was so for everybody else, there was a movie called Gargantua that is a Japanese movie, and they had this creature was small, but it kept growing and eventually got large, like Godzilla is large. And then there was another one, and so there was the one that was nice was brown, and then the one that was mean was green, and so that they had to distinguish because the green one started going on eating people, and they're like, oh my God, Gargantua turned evil, and it was like, oh no, there's two of them, and they end up fighting and blah blah blah.
Everyone knows the Green Power Ranger is sus.
Thank you for that, by the way.
I'm gonna like
yes, get us back on track.
Drag the conversation, kicking and screaming, away from social media. I know. Maintain and hold back your tears. Seriously, right? Because there is an awful lot going on. For example, last week we all did hands up about who's going to take the vaccine and whatever. And I was quite disturbed because this week I saw in Ohio's like 50% of healthcare workers are not accepting the vaccine. And in LA, it's depending on which hospital you're talking about in Los Angeles, it's 20 to 40% of them are going, no thanks. And these are the people who are working in the bloody old folks' homes and in the hospitals and other care facilities and whatever. And if they're not taking the damn vaccine, are we all just going to get bumped up in the line, or do we have to wait until they cave in to take the vaccine? And I don't know, man. It's just like,
I have a question.
The attitude is, if you're not going to take it, get the fuck out of my way.
I have a question. Why are they refusing to take the vaccine? Because you'd have thought, being on the front line, they are the ones that are possibly in most immediate need of it.
And many of them have gotten sick and died.
Well, Brian, as far as I'm aware, there are several different narratives to why certain people may deny it, and I don't necessarily think. I think different categories of people might have different applications. But for example, there's some people who are anti-vaxxers, just full stop. So there's that.
5G microchips.
There's also people who fancy themselves like well-informed who say, hey, man, it's too soon. We haven't tested any long-term effects, blah, 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 which is a valid point. There's no long-term effects testing available because the virus is not even a year old yet, right? Or hasn't been killing Americans for a year yet. I should put it that way.
Right.
Anyway, and so the whole rush out thing is another argument. There's also this argument especially I've got a number of acquaintances and friends in Britain who are of Generation Z, and they're basically bulletproof as far as they're concerned. And they're like, hey, if I get sick, I'm going to be fine. And that's as far as they think they have to think about it. And as hard as it is for me to wrap my head around it, a lot of people really do think like that. And so I don't know, and there might be more than those three reasons, but I think there's at least those three.
Yeah, I mean, one of my reasons for asking is that by some people's standards, you could consider me an anti-vaxxer, but not the science denying wackadoo type. I do have some valid arguments against vaccines being applied en masse at an early age. But let's not get into that.
I have body sovereignty issues.
But my other reason for asking is because of the vaccines that have been administered in this country so far. For my particular health group, I sufferer of ME, myalgic encephalomyelitis, otherwise known as chronic fatigue syndrome over there in the US. And it has been shown to have an exasperating effect, some with long-term consequences for my condition. So I have a vested interest in knowing if any vaccine that I'm offered is actually going to be safe for me to take. So this is my full disclosure as to why I'm interested in this particular topic.
I mean, what I don't understand is look, and certainly I don't believe in forcing anyone to take a vaccine. I mean, the military is a little different, but in the military, you kind of give up a lot of your rights to be in the military. But other than that, on the flip side, I don't understand hospitals allowing people, like if I was a doctor and I had staff working for me, it would be like, you don't have to get the shot, but you can't work here, because basically what ends up happening is you become a vet. If you're unprotected, you are a vector to continuing to spread. And since you will be facing people who are infected, you will eventually carry it at least, and then pass it on to others and possibly get sick yourself. And I would basically, I would be a line in the sand for me. Like, hey, if you don't want to get it, that's fine. It's your body, but you don't work here anymore. And that's it. And again, my mother got sick from the virus because of shoddy procedures at the place she's at. She was sick for over 3 months, and she's somebody who was immunocompromised. So we were very concerned. Obviously, it could have killed her. I mean, thankfully it didn't. But we still don't know yet if there'll be any long-term effects. We haven't seen anything yet, anything big, but she hasn't had a complete workup yet because you really can't right now because it's not safe to do so.
I have a completely different attitude about the vaccine to people with deeper concerns than I have. I mean, I understand some people's concerns about the vaccine for sure, but from my attitude, I mean, and maybe this is ignorant, and maybe this is, I admit that maybe this is just kind of stupid, but the way I look at it, and I'm being a little bit flippant, I know, but I mean, I will put a couple of micrograms of something into my bloodstream for 7 or 8 hours of pleasure, right? So if I can get a couple of years of protection against a deadly virus by taking a few milliliters of vaccine, That's a small price to pay for me. You know what I mean? If it works.
But yeah, one thing that I also think that's kind of, we mentioned this last week before, the interesting thing about this one is that it's different than any other vaccine that we've seen before, because it doesn't contain live virus. It doesn't contain dead or weakened virus. It's completely just this is just an mRNA treatment, and it's actually not as rushed as it seems, only because they were already working on this technology because of the previous SARS outbreak. So it's not off the shelf. It just we already got a jump start on it. And it was a similar enough virus. They said, hey, well, you know what? We could use this technology for this too.
Yeah. Tommy from the Bronx, can you hear us? Are you able?
Can you hear me?
Hey, Tommy's here.
How you doing? Yeah, when the vaccine finally works, Biden did it, right? That's what you're going to say, Joe?
No, not at all. Actually, I'm going to say Pfizer did it, because it wasn't. They didn't get any money from Operation Lightspeed, so it wasn't Trump either, and it wasn't Biden.
Hey, listen,
and Tommy, you got the bad pneumonia earlier this year, but that wasn't the COVID, was it?
No, thank God it wasn't. But anyway, you guys are so easy to rile up, especially you, Dev. You are so easy to get going.
Tommy, did you leave your hat at work or something? You didn't want to show your bald spot? Is that it?
No, I have too much hair, actually. I hate it.
He doesn't want to show his face.
Razors for that. And actually, the men's razors are cheaper than the women's razors. So you should feel free to avail yourself of those Bic services.
Now, he's hiding his face because he's going to have to give me that $100.
Yeah, when is that officially supposed to happen? On Inauguration Day?
Inauguration.
When is it happening?
Inauguration Day.
Hey, I don't back out. I'll give him his $100. I know it's not going to happen, but you never know. I took the chance.
Sorry, what is the actual prediction on this? I want to follow.
The prediction was whether or not he had bet me that Biden would not be getting sworn in on January 20th, and then Trump would remain president. But hey, I give Tommy full props that he had the integrity to come here and say that just now, unlike certain people who will remain nameless. So
I don't
it's a $10 fine if they get named as well. So don't anybody name the name, because
are you being real? Like, there's actually a fine if you're not serious.
I'm serious.
About a $10 fine if we name certain people's. I'm lost on this one.
Join me. I haven't got a clue.
I don't know who we're talking about either, but I'll wrap up the fine.
But no, I'm glad Tommy's here, because you've been in the chat for like months and months, and you finally joined us. That's good.
Finally, I'm not working on a Saturday, so I figured let me come in.
Yeah, that's cool, Tommy. I'm really glad you took up the invitation, man. So, Tommy, have you got anything that you'd like to bring into the conversation, being the noob on the block?
Hold on 1 second.
Okay, holding on. The suspense is fucking killing me.
I grabbed my computer. I'm holding on. Hold on.
Okay, top row. Okay, top row. While we're waiting for Tommy, everybody do the wave. Ready? I'll start.
Oh, wait. Uh-oh.
That was fucking pathetic. Let's try it again, okay?
Okay. No, I had a phone call. Sorry. Hey, enough with the wave. Okay, that's enough.
Right, yeah, you're making it all bouncy down here.
Has anybody in here had the vaccine shot yet? Anybody?
No.
Nobody. If it was
my mom gets it on the 11th.
Okay, that's cool. I'd like to know how that goes, by the way, maybe on our next Breakfast Club or whatever. But I've seen, I don't know if it's propaganda, a bunch of bullshit, but, people getting Bell's palsy from this thing, people collapsing, people actually dying from this vaccine. Now, I've only heard this report in the UK, so I don't know about anything over here so far. But if it was right next to you right now, you take that shot, you'd be the guinea pig, you'd be the trial basis right now?
I would not.
Yep.
I would like to hear each individual reason why you would take it. Most of them will be the same, I'm sure, but I would like to hear the differences.
For me, Tommy, I want to travel internationally. I want to be able to get on a plane with confidence, and that's my main reason.
I want the world to get back to normal.
Yeah,
So-
I want the world to get back to normal, but I think I want to wait at least a couple months before, you know, to just know. I mean, we'll get a better idea of what the side effects have been.
So I have said that I don't particularly feel like I'm in a rush to be the first in line to take that. I do definitely, I'm with Goth with the travel thing. If I thought I was going to be traveling somewhere, I would definitely be considering it much more. But the reason that I'm not is because, one, I worry that while it was, I feel like it was probably created in the way that everybody is describing, you know, we had some previous stuff, we still don't have time to see the results. Also, I had COVID and therefore I've got stuff in, I'm unlikely to get COVID-19. I might get COVID-20, however, and I've heard that there have already been mutations to the COVID that the vaccine is for. So I'm kind of like, I feel like there needs to be some time to see what's going on before I go get myself stuck with this thing, you know. And I mean, but I am not against vaccines as a general rule. I just don't know that I want to, you know, be the first in line. I guess I'm not that brave.
I'm gonna go with Sister Danger on that one. I'll probably eventually have to get it technically because I actually do a job where I have to have certain certain vaccines and things. I'm not anti-vax either by any stretch of the imagination. I think vaccines make a lot of sense. It's just like she said, it hasn't been thoroughly tested, and I am kind of, iffy. But I do want to get back to making films and vlogging and getting back out there and doing stuff. But I also take care of my mom, and she's elderly, so that's something I got to kind of watch out for, if nothing else, for her. So I'm anxious for it, and at the same time iffy about it. So there's that.
I'm upset that I haven't been able to get it yet. I mean, I have a number of reasons. As I mentioned last week, I'm morbidly obese. I have diabetes. I have hypertension. Probably, technically congestive heart failure. And so basically, and I'm older. I'm over 50, and I'm Black. So I'm assuming that if I get it, I'm most likely going to die or have long-term, debilitating health effects from it. Plus, I'm here. Suzanne's over 70, so she's at risk as well. And I have no choice because I work and support essential industries. I have no choice but to occasionally have to go on site at sites where the operators are generally not wearing masks and not taking precautions. So for me, it's just it's a matter of time until I get it. So if I don't get the vaccine, then I'm already playing Russian roulette with my life. And I'm taking all the precautions I can. I stay basically, if I don't have to go to a customer site, I stay the fuck home. I had to drive. I went to see somebody the other day. It was the first time I left the house in like 8 days. Yeah, for me, the risk, I'm basically weighing whatever risks there might be of the vaccine versus the real risks of what happens if I get infected. So to me, it's no question. I'm getting it the instant I'm able to.
Yeah, okay, I'll go next on this one. And for me, I'm kind of like with Sister Danger too. I'm not anti-vax either. I think vaccines do serve a purpose, but I'm also the same. I want to see what happens. I just want to see how things are going too. But on the other hand, I'm starting to, and I know about all of you, I'm starting to know a lot more people who have gotten COVID. And, Sister Danger, you're one of them. My mom has a friend who's been in the hospital. He's actually on the ventilator and everything. He's had COVID since December 11th. And so, and I've had another friend, she works in healthcare. She's gotten she's already in the process of recovery. So for me, it's a matter of not an if, but a when for me. So I want to see what happens, what's going to be the effects of this. But at the same time, I want to travel too. I want things to get back to normal. I want to be able to see people. I want to be able to meet friends and all that. But I'm looking to see what happens first. See what the results are. Then if it seems like it's deemed safe. And I also have a friend who works. He does like a lot of the experiments with the drugs and everything. He's already taken it, and he says it's just like taking a tetanus shot as far as feeling it. So I do know people who are going through this personally, who have taken it. So it's nice to see what's going to happen with that.
See, here's a question I have for everybody, because the consensus seems to be like, yeah, I want to do it, but I'm going to wait. Now, Brian obviously has a medical condition that he's at a greater risk than the rest of us for potential reaction to the vaccine. So I totally get where he's coming from. But for everybody else, it basically comes down to the only thing. There's two elements that could cause a problem. One would be the vaccine itself, or the carrier. Now the carrier, these are known carriers. So this is not like we're taking a carrier that is new, because I would be more concerned about that too. So then the only really thing is the active element itself, which again is a messenger RNA thing, which it's just kind of similar to CRISPR, although not exactly. So I'm kind of I guess my question is, what concerns people the most? Like, what do they think is the thing that's posing the most danger, if there is one?
I'd like to just give my answer to Tommy's question. The reasons for my hesitancy I've already given, and Joe's further expounded on. But from my perspective, a working vaccine is a faster and safer route to herd immunity. And that really is when life will return to some form of normality. And yes, ultimately, if there is a vaccine that is safe for me to take, I will take it, because there's a lot of traveling around this country that I want to do with exiled. And there's also a lot of stuff in the States that she has to show me, and things that I still would like to do, like see the Grand Canyon, for example. So yeah, that's kind of where I am.
So reiterating here, just confirming, no one here has gotten the vaccine. None of us.
Not yet.
Okay, so that confirms it for me that it isn't real. It's a hoax, just like the virus. There's no vaccine. There's no virus. There was no election.
That might be true. I mean,
but every one of you. First of all, I haven't taken. I wouldn't take the vaccine, and that's it. I'm not going to go into it. I just wouldn't take it till I seen that thing work. Okay, because I smoke. I probably have some respiratory problems too. And I have a slight case of asthma. But you also got to worry about that allergic reaction that could happen to you, Joe, or to you, Brian, that has these, large big medical reasons why not to take it. But everyone said it, you want to get back to normal. But how much normality is it going to be when you got to have an application on your phone just to get in anywhere after this? They are saying right now, that you're going to have an app on your phone to get in anywhere. They're saying it in the NBA. They're saying it in all these. I've been following the sports things more often, but they said to get into a stadium to watch a football game, you are going to have to show that you are COVID. You have been vaccinated for COVID.
I want to comment on that, because
it's almost like Nazi Germany saying, "Hey, here's your papers."
It's
not as bad, of course. I'm just saying.
Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. This is because what I was going to say is kind of related to what you and Dev also just said. And then I said, because I was like, I don't want to be first in line, right? But I'm not anti-vax. However, what I do think that means is that it is now my responsibility, because I'm choosing not to take it right away. I should continue to engage in the quarantining, the self-quarantining as much as possible until I decide to take it. Like, it is my responsibility to stay at home as much as I can.
That's what I'm doing too. Yep.
You know, or order in or do whatever, right? And so, but if I was to be a person that was like going to be in the front line in the hospitals, I think that I would feel an immense amount more pressure to be taking that thing, because you're dealing with the people right now. And I think that when you say, like, so when you, the reason I think this ties in is because I feel like this is also kind of up there with peanut allergy, for example, or other people that don't want to get vaccines for this, that, and the other, but they want to walk around and spread all of that potentially to people that depend on herd immunity, to, you know, little kids that aren't old enough to get the thing yet, or whatever it is, because they don't want, their religion doesn't believe in it, or they don't believe in science, or whatever their freaking excuse is. I don't think that it's that crazy that they're going to be like, oh, have the app on the phone and show us that you've had these vaccines before we let you into the stadium where people are packed in like sardines and you are actually a danger to people, right? So, I mean, unless there's, who knows what that will look like, but that's the counter argument to anti-vaxxers, is that you people just don't believe in it because basically you can't science very well, and is what it comes down to. And because
I'm not saying I don't believe in it, I'm just not going to take it right.
I'm not saying
I'll take every precaution too. You know, I know. I just wanted to make that clear.
Well, no, but the thing is, as far as the documentation, I mean, generally in most places, like I know here in New Jersey, if you want to put your kid in public school, you have to provide documentation.
Right.
I've got dogs. I've got to provide to the town on a like every other year that my dogs have rabies shots, because if they get out, but my dogs don't bite anybody. But if theoretically they could, so that this way that the public knows that they're safe, that if they do get bitten by my dogs, that they're not at risk. So I don't see it as any more of an imposition than that, because that's the thing, is that there's no freedom that's absolute. And it can't be, because our freedoms are constantly bumping up against one another. So
aren't there like a number of countries that you can't travel to without proof of having certain vaccines?
Yes, especially in Africa. You have like third world countries, and plus when you come back from them, you can't do certain things like get tattoos, for example, until you've been back in the country long enough to demonstrate that you have not contracted anything from said third world country. I don't know. I guess I just don't. I think that there is a difference. I will say this. I mean, maybe a little bit kind of leaning in with Tommy, is that I think there's a difference between the government preventing you from going into places based on your vaccine and businesses making the decision to say, we want proof from people for all of our customers' sake that if we're going to let you in our door to come shopping in our place or to be in our stadium, that you're safe. Right, because it's one thing when the government does it, and it's another thing when a business says, well, no shirt, no shoes, no vaccine, no service.
Well, no, but here's the thing, though, is that the government's not going to stop you from going into private locations without the documentation. They're going to stop you from going into government facilities, which is, again, that's exactly the same what we do with the schools. Is that because the public schools are controlled by the government, and that's the rule. If you want a public school education, with a few rare exceptions, your child must be vaccinated. And so that's the thing that kind of flummoxes me about the whole COVID situation and how people have behaved, because it's no different than anything else we've already done in our society forever. And somehow it got political, and it never should have been.
Okay, but what about this new strain that's come out, the B117 strain, it's a mutated corona? It's 50% more contagious than the corona 19 virus. Right. Now, everybody's going to take this vaccine for this corona 19 virus. How do we know it's going to work on that B117? Are we going to keep taking vaccines so close together, different vaccines so close together? That can cause a medical problem, I think.
No.
Based on what?
They're already saying that one vaccine shot is not going to be enough for this corona. It's going to take 2 or 3.
But multiple vaccines, or taking them close together, don't have medical ramifications for people. I mean, in general, for the most part, the vast majority of people mean absolutely nothing. I mean, I've gotten double vaccines.
You and I will have to have a conversation about that at some point, Dev.
All right. I mean, I take a lot of vaccines because I have to, because I have HIV.
Okay, let me ask you real quick, Dev.
I get vaccines for, so.
Real quick, let me say something. Now, why won't you, if it's going to take 2 or 3, why are they telling you to take 6 months to a year in between to take these vaccines? If it's okay to take 3 in a row, then take 3 different ones right back to back to back.
That defeats the purpose of the booster. I mean, the whole idea of it isn't like, it's like they give you one, right?
Yeah.
You've got like a certain amount of protection from the one.
Correct.
Then you have to give your body some time to process that, right? And then to make antibodies and everything else, because your body has to react to it. And then you get the second one as a booster, and then that gives you full protection. If you take both of them at once, you're still only going to be, your body is going to see that as one, not as 2.
What happens if this vaccine is the total opposite?
It isn't like a drug. It's not like they're giving you X amount of a plant matter. It's basically it's a strand of like RNA. I mean, it's man, it's hard to science on the fly.
I think the polio vaccine works in a similar way. When you get a series of polio vaccines as a child, each one builds upon the immunity provided by the other, until you reach a state where you are considered to be protected.
That's right, and that's the thing. They don't spread it out for a safety reason. They spread it out for efficacy reasons.
Okay.
You know, and that's the thing. Like I said, you know, it's sad to me. It's very sad to me that it's gotten, you know, become a political issue, and then very often people decided how they were going to act based on, you know, whether they were pro-Trump, anti-Trump, didn't give a fuck about Trump, you know, and because and how it got to be this idea that you were tough if you didn't wear a mask, which is silly because the mask isn't protecting the wearer so much as protecting the people around the wearer. So that doesn't mean that someone's tough. It means someone doesn't give a fuck about the people around them.
I genuinely don't think that many of the people who are anti-maskers actually grasp that concept. I mean, not in a way that they've like literally internalize what that means.
I mean, there's very little excuse for that because it's been repeated over and over and over and over again.
Sure, but if you, I mean, when I say
they look at it as fake news or something.
But I'm not even sure it's that. When I say I think they don't grasp it, I think that they genuinely don't grasp it. Like they hear those words, they understand those words, but then in action and like in the manifestation in reality, they don't have a connection. Like there's just
their first internal response is, why should I have to care about what happens to other people?
Yeah, you know what's crazy about that is that they're always out there like, the laws and my rights or whatever. And I just think to myself, well, my God, why do you agree to wear clothes? Like, how is that not infringing on your right to just run around? You know what? In fact, I think you wearing clothes is infringing on my negative right to see as many nude people as I want to see. How about that?
I think it's far more simple than that. You know, they're just seriously pissed off at the fact that when they wear a mask, it mists up the inside of their sunglasses.
That is a legit concern. I will tell you what. But you know what? It can be solved with a Band-Aid.
Well,
guys, I would like to take the conversation in a little bit more of a lighthearted direction because we have kind of covered this sort of thing before. So let me bring up on the screen this little comment here. Because
hey, can I make a request?
Here comes.
When you put comments on the screen, can you leave them up for a little bit longer than you normally do? Because I don't always have time to read them.
Okay. I saw it. Everyone who's seen Netflix's Death to 2020.
I saw it twice.
I have not.
I absolutely urge you to watch it the minute you wake up in the morning.
All right, I shall watch it when
A
I
premise?
leave here.
Premise?
Yeah, what's the premise?
The premise is it's okay. I'll give you a synopsis. Right? It's a review show of the year like you normally get, except it's taking the piss. It's got lots of famous people in it, like Lisa Kudrow or Samuel L. Jackson, and lots of other people who are famous who are playing characters who are like supposed to be real people, taking the mick out of people who actually did exist in 2020, who were
Hugh Grant was fantastic in that.
amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing
It's
too,
deep, it's funny, it's dark humor, so you know, you got to be in the right mood for it. But maybe if you're not in the right mood for it, it'll put you in the right mood by watching it. I don't know. But
Okay, well, it sounds like a reasonable change from hillbilly rednecks playing ridiculous games, because I've been finding that hilarious.
yeah, the funny thing to me about, I mean, it's the arbitrary nature of time. Obviously, like the calendar humans created, is made it up. There's no a lot of not a lot of significance to it other than we put attached meaning to it. And so everyone's like, oh, the year is over and now it's all better. Like, no. Like, hopefully, I'm hopeful that between there's actually 3 vaccines, between the vaccines and the new administration, and my $100 are going to get, that things will get better.
It's definitionally true, though, Joe.
But I mean, there, it's funny because if you think that, I think it all started by 2015. Like 2015 was a shit year, and then 2016 was worse, and then 2017 was worse, and we kept thinking, oh, it's the end of the year. I'm like, dude, is that a light at the end of the tunnel or a fucking train? I don't know.
According to the Bible, Joe, we have 7 years of tribulation, so I guess this is year 6. So,
yeah, this friend of mine said on Facebook yesterday, I just wish the frickin' apocalypse would just happen already.
Well, that would be the bitch of it, for those of us that are in the non-believing group, that like it would be like, if like a year and a half from now, it's like, fuck, they were right. I can't fucking believe it. I can't believe they were right. God damn it.
Yeah, but
I had this theory. I had this theory
about
that
human nature.
in 2016 we had the rapture, right? Because all the great souls, you had Muhammad Ali and Prince and David Bowie and a whole bunch, Princess Leia and her mother and George Michael and you name it. Fucking,
this is true. They
super, super famous, super culturally impactful people. But you know what? In 2020, we had a hell of a lot as well. Kobe, for example. I mean, I could go on and on. I'm not going to do another list, but it was actually a pretty big one this year as well. But no, getting back to the whole 7 years of tribulation thing, I don't believe that shit for a second, of course. But it kind of fits reality, which is disturbing to me.
Well,
like you said,
the thing is,
progressively worse every year for 5 years in a row.
I mean, just remember, so does Nostradamus. You can look at any prophecy and you can retroactively apply that to some fitting set of circumstances.
There is also the inescapable reality that we are a very predictable species.
Mm.
It's
and our collective behavior does tend to go in cycles. If you look back over history, collectively we repeat the same cycle over and over. We get to a peak of so-called civilization, and then we have a collapse, and then we have a renaissance and a recovery. Yeah.
What if this time we're not able to have? What if we're not able to have the Renaissance after a collapse? What if we're heading towards a collapse? But because our technology is more advanced than it ever, our tech and our military are more advanced than they've ever been in the past, that it actually will prevent something like, storm the Bastille, right? Where the populace can, because of numbers, rise up against the ruling minority, and the ruling minority, through sheer force of their control over these things, will be able to continue to subjugate. And what if they are assisted? Okay, I'm going to make a little reference to what was that, the Handmaid's Tale. What if they are assisted? What if, like if you were to just make an allegory, the government and our, say, ruling class politicians, right? Those guys are like the husbands, and all of the people that support them, all those Trump MAGA hats and whatever, they're the wives. And they're getting in on it because they want to be in on it early, so they get the rewards of having been a wife, and then everybody else is the handmaids, right?
2 words. 2 words. Survival dictates.
Survival dictates.
Yep. So my opinion, if there was like, this collapse, like we talked about before, most likely it would start here and we're heading right for it. And eventually, like Brian said, there would be like, a renaissance, a rebirth, and recovery. But it would be before that, it would be like Mad Max. And it wouldn't just be the U.S. Shadow in the chat earlier said that the U.S. is not the center of the world. No, it is. I mean, you can say that, there's a world outside the U.S., obviously. But this is the financial center of the world. And even if culturally other places don't crash, they will crash financially. Drag down their governments, everything will collapse around it because there's no money. So U.S. will enter a worldwide dark age, mostly worldwide dark age, and it'll be like Mad Max, and it'll be ugly, and there'll be a lot of starvation and a lot of death and a lot of violence and a lot of paramilitary nutbags.
Yeah, we definitely
I hope it doesn't get like that. I've done a fair amount of traveling. I've never been to Asia, but I've been around different parts of Europe. And one thing that is definitely striking when you go around different countries in Europe is that civilization, this speaks a little bit to what Brian was saying a moment ago, but I'll disagree only in nuance. I mean, civilization is in a constant state of rising and falling. And when you travel throughout Europe, you can see that stark as day. Rome is the starkest example I've ever been to. There's buildings that have literally stood for 2,000 years and they look brand new. And then there's 2 blocks away, buildings with loads of fucking graffiti all over that are falling apart and the plaster's chipping off. And, it's just disgusting. Same city, And when I went to Portugal as well, and I went to Lisbon, and Lisbon is in a state of rising and falling right at the same time. And I've never been to Asia, but I'm quite sure it's the same. And I'm quite sure that there's a lot more rising right now than falling in Asia. So whether or not the United States collapsing brings down the rest of the world, I don't really think that's a given. I don't. I think Asia might just go, see you later, bye.
Their hope is China. They would lean on the rest of Asia would lean on China.
I would agree with your nuance there, Paul. And I would also agree with what Dev was saying is that, that's a potential view of America in the coming decades. But whether that necessarily crosses the globe, yes, financially, because the dollar is the cornerstone of global currencies these days. But as Paul was saying, when I made my statement, I phrased it in terms of group behavior. And just like you'll find, even within a single flock, you've got certain groups of individuals that are flowing one way and other groups of individuals that are flowing the other way. Global civilization is in perpetual flux. I needn't look no further than my own country. 100 years ago, we were looking at the beginning of the decline of our empirical era. We are now a very isolated, self-isolated, suicidal nation that is not looking to be a world player at the moment. Quite obviously, we are looking to be dictated to by the very institutions that we sought to sever ourselves from, because we're now in a position whereby we are going to have to commit to EU directives and take on EU legislation, and we no longer have a say in the process.
Right, and that was one thing that got me about Brexit too, because I was like, they kept seeming to think that like, well, if we get rid of the EU, we get rid of the requirements. Like, well, only if you don't plan on selling anything into the EU. Otherwise, you still have the requirements and none of the benefits.
Right.
But as far as society collapse, I mean, I don't know whether it'll happen or not. Like I said, I don't think it'll be a complete collapse if it does happen. But to what Sister Danger said, that kind of harkens on to like conspiratorial stuff. What convinced me, because obviously out there, those people think like there's like the, and I'm not saying that she does, but I'm just saying there are people out there who think that there's like these big players and they're all kind of in cahoots and pulling the levers and all that, and everything's for show. What convinced me that that's not true was Hurricane Sandy. Because in Hurricane Sandy hit, and generally speaking, when Rob will tell you, when hurricanes hit New Jersey, they're usually not that bad because they usually make landfall like the Carolinas. They drive up the coast and they kind of burn themselves out. Or they hit Florida. By the time they hit us, it's barely a tropical storm at that point. But Sandy hit us hard, and roughly half the state was without. Actually, no, it was about 65% of the state was without power for weeks. For most of the state, and Connecticut and New York, and we're not used to that. And when was just totally hit, and it was cold, so there was no heat and all this, everyone was in a daze. No one knew what to do because our society is so technological. We don't even think of how dependent we are on technology. And when power goes out, most of that stops working. And I realized
the worst fucking part of that whole thing, Joe, was when it went before Congress. It said New Jersey needs help, and Southern fucking representatives and senators who get help from every fucking thing, every flood they get money, every hurricane they get money, every earthquake they get money. What happens? They get money. They all voted no for New Jersey. New Jersey pays more per dollar of its tax money to the other states than any other state in the country. We are the largest giver from this state. And when we needed it, the country said.
Exactly. And that's why I reached a point where I don't even feel sorry for people in these zones where shit happens all the time. I don't feel sorry for them anymore because they vote for representatives that told me to go fuck myself when the one time in 60 years when we actually needed help. But the thing is that but anyway, when power was out, everyone was in this daze. I realized that if there really were these forces pulling all these levers and they wanted to dominate and control us in the way that conspiracy people think, because they have all the money and power, they already dominate in that way, but that in this kind of like organized, sinister way, if they were really doing that, they wouldn't need all these machinations. They wouldn't need all these, these convoluted plans. Literally, all they would have to do is shut off the fucking power, and we would be on our knees. So that proves to be there and they know this. They don't have to come up with all this convoluted bullshit. They would just go click, and we go and that would be it.
There is a counter to that aspect of human nature, and that is our ability to pull together in times of crisis. And Dev was alluding to that with regards federal funding of various disaster relief efforts. And while I was listening to you guys talking, I had somewhat of an epiphany. And when it comes to the global air quote apocalypse, yes, America collapses, let's say, the worst happens. America collapses, descends into anarchy and Mad Max territory, and there is an outside America. I haven't got time. Fuck America. Yeah, all of that stuff goes on. Elsewhere in the world, you'll have societies that pull together because they have the infrastructure set up in such a way as, yes, the global resources are, by the very nature of the system, channeled towards the public upkeep and the public good. And guess what that system's called, ladies and gentlemen? Socialism.
I have a
To what
question.
Deb was saying earlier, like way earlier in the show, you're like, if you don't like how this country runs, get out. So one, that phrase irks me a lot because it is not easy to leave America at all. Like
And it's
not
not
at
you.
all.
And it's not you.
If you're lucky, it's a 2-year process, right? Like, but what I wonder is if that wasn't the case, if there was just like open borders and people could move wherever it was they wanted to, how many people actually would exodus this place and go someplace else where they do get things like, oh, I don't know, regular old health care, right?
I think Canada and Mexico would be overrun within a month.
Yeah, right. And everybody along the northern border is going to run to I don't know. I might go. California, Mexico is not that far of a drive. I might want to go south because Mexico and cheap tequila.
Yeah, I mean, you've already got people who will make that journey purely and simply because they can get a better deal. They can get it cheaper in Mexico.
I have a question for Tommy, and it's a legit question because I mean I know Tommy's to the right of me, but I don't really know how much. I mean, yeah, I know he likes to rile us up, so I get that at least part of what he says is just to try to get under our skin. But since we're talking about immigrating and emigrating, one of the things that the right wing in general seems to have a problem with is they have this concern about immigration and about who's coming here and all that. And one of the charges that's levied at the left is that we want open borders. Now, I don't really know anybody on the left that actually wants just completely open, porous borders where we don't check anybody and everything. But here's the thing. The thing I thought about is, what if that was what we want? What's the bad part about that? Because when I was in one of the times I was in Germany, we drove up to the Netherlands and then back. And the only way you knew you left from one country to another is that the streets, the road signs changed slightly, and the language, I could tell the difference between Dutch and German. But there wasn't even anybody watching the border because they're both EU countries, and there's free movement across the border. So, I mean, you can't go and move. I mean, I guess there's a limit. I mean, I guess to a degree you can move from Germany to the Netherlands, but there's still some limits. But there's no border guards checking you out and all that. There used to be, but there isn't anymore. So what would be so bad if it was a lot easier to move back and forth to the United States, away from the United States, and all that?
Okay. Now, Europe.
Sorry. Tommy.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Well,
but I have an answer.
Be kind of quick. I mean, I don't really want borders, to be honest with you. I really don't even. I feel like the whole world should be able to come and go wherever they want to go.
Cool. All right.
I think I obviously I don't want criminals coming here. I don't want, a bunch of sick people coming here during Corona. But like you said, I would love to go up to Canada without showing any ID, or go down to Mexico and show any ID. I would love that. And plus, it would open it up if you were a criminal, you murdered someone here, you run down to friggin' Mexico, well, you might be able to go down there and get them now, since the borders are open, without having to go fight through all the red tape to get this person.
Well, not only that, we could exchange information too, like files and whatnot. So you can't go someplace and then get anonymity by sheer fact of just, I hopped the border, right? Like, if we're doing what Tom.
Yeah, no, thanks, Tommy. I appreciate that. Oh, and that's actually that's to me more consistent with libertarian ideology. Although I hear but when I hear people that are libertarian that who aren't Tommy, who basically express kind of like this fear of who's coming. I'm like, but I thought a libertarian should be like getting the government out of the way, let people go wherever the hell they want.
I think to be honest with you, building this wall right now during this epidemic and the money going there and not to the people is ridiculous. That's it. I mean, that's dumb.
That is
broad agreement on that one.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, Joe, you brought up the European Union as an example of borders coming down and it working seamlessly. Point A was, you should have seen just how quickly border control was re-implemented as a result of COVID. But two, you just have to look at Europe and your own nation, with regards the spread of COVID. The larger an area you have free and open access to, the faster something like COVID can actually propagate throughout the species. So in a way, yes, border control can be a good protection against that.
Yep.
But on the other hand, you do have, the ability to determine your own life. Like, for example,
I'm
if I
pretty
wanted
sure.
to go and live in Ethiopia, I should have that
Yeah, well,
possibility.
and that's really because certainly under COVID, that's an unusual circumstance. It's not a typical,
Absolutely, yes.
not a typical
Yeah.
thing. And the funny thing is, I mean, technically speaking, like certain states have said this thing. Oh, if you're coming down from New Jersey, like back in earlier when the Northeast was like kind of the epicenter in the United States, they were actually saying like, well, if you go to Florida, you got to quarantine. But of course, no one was actually checking, so it didn't mean it was literally all in the honor system.
So here's an interesting, maybe it's interesting. With regards to open borders, I feel like there are so many things that would first have to be resolved between places before open borders could actually be something that is realized, at least if we are talking with regards to people also being able to transfer where they live, right? So if I wanted to move to Canada or Mexico, like if we're just talking travel, way easier. But if we're talking people actually moving, there are huge economic impacts that would have. And if the things that influence where it is that people, because we do not have any kind of universal, oh man, everybody get your tinfoil hats out. We don't have any kind of a universal government or standardization for laws, for things that we consider human rights. There, for things that are for the just like, what do we consider, legal, illegal? How many places are way more religious or less religious, right? And so I think that, like, if we were just to imagine, poof, everybody can go anywhere they want and live there. Just like, let's just go with that for a second. I would be concerned that one of the things we would see happen is that people will want to go someplace where, one, it's kind of a strong center of economic commerce, but then also is a place that aligns with their values, if you will, like, if that makes any sense, right?
Sure.
And I would say that places that do that for the most amount of people are metropolises, because those are the places where you have great diversity, and therefore metropolises must cater to that, right, in order to function. So you're going to see people heading to places that will kind of engender a diverse, but then what does that do to everywhere else in the world that is, say, for example, like way more conservative, like Gilead type of conservative, or Geminon type of conservative, Amish type of conservative, or somewhere in between, right? Like,
well, so we already know, though, because we have the United States where we can go state to state, and the states are the size of European countries for the most part. Some of them are much larger than European countries. So we actually have that here, and that does happen, and we do see. And there are people, like, I've known a lot of people who were from New Jersey who they hated the fact that there's so many people and that's diverse and for whatever, and they wanted to live, somewhere where it was quieter and slower and more less diverse, shall we say? So that's not new, and we're kind of already an example of that within the country.
So
I personally think that things like this can't be solved with issues of politics, and from where I'm coming from, it all comes down to how we raise our kids. If you raise your kids to believe that we are one people, one love, right? And I mean, seriously, and you don't just tell them that, you live it. And I think the world can change. I really, really do. And I don't think these things need to depend on political or legislative solutions necessarily. But I think it really depends on a unified will. And I don't know how to achieve that without some kind of political cohesion.
So Oh man, I totally forgot what I was going to say. It was related to what Joe was saying now, and now I can't remember. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that having the collective will to implement some of the changes that needs must happen for a cohesive global society to stand a chance of functioning, you are going to have to reach an awful lot of compromises, because some of the differences are so extreme and so, as we've seen because of the internet, bipolar in nature and so divisive by nature, and in a lot of cases subjective. So there's no empirical way ultimately of proving one from the other. So where can you find the compromise? And that, I think, is the difficulty.
So I think the fastest way to achieve a cohesive global society would be an alien invasion.
Like the enemy of my enemy.
That would do it. That would do it. You would see, at that point, you would see the entire planet band together and
temporarily.
Temporarily. Yeah, I will agree.
But could we not see something like? But could we not see something like COVID as metaphorically the same circumstances?
Okay, so what Joe said, and then literally this relates to COVID. So what Joe said, right, talking about how we've seen this happen in the United States, because states are approximately the size of European countries, we can travel freely between them, and we see that people do in fact move and gravitate towards places, leaving these vast rural areas and little pockets of people. Now, recently,
sorry, I have to correct you on one thing. We're actually seeing the population in the more rural states grow right now, and the population in the bigger states slow down.
I mean, I don't live in like a rural state because I'm in New Jersey, but I am in a very rural area of New Jersey, and right now the population is booming. Houses are flying.
I mean, I want to be in a rural place, so I can understand. I think though that what I'm getting at though is that something that happens when this takes place is that, so right now we're kind of seeing people trying to exit it from the city, right? But rural areas tend to not be as up on how things actually happen and get done. This is like a thing that I've witnessed, like just people in small towns, like they don't understand how big city commerce works because they don't ever encounter it, right? They don't need to. Yeah, right. They like systems and productions and what do they call it? The lines of
see, you're talking about them and you don't even know what it's called.
I do know what it's called because I wrote this in a fucking thing the other day. However, when I'm saying a thing and a bunch of thoughts are trying to go around, I'm trying to hang on to this one idea. But what I'm getting at is that interestingly, like I got in this argument the other day because I was watching people down in Lewis County yet again, where we have that stupid restaurant where they're like, we're not going to enforce any COVID mandates at all. And now the state is charging them $10,000 in fines a day for every day that their restaurant stays open. And just like there's a crazy amount of people down there that are like, we support them doing this thing, right? And those people are griping about how the reason that everything is screwed up in our county is because of King County, which is where Seattle is and where the majority of Washington State's population is. And they all vote Democrat and they're effing it up for everybody, right? And I was like, you know what? So I don't live in King County, but it's like next door to me. But I was like, you know what? King County, like almost 50% of the taxes from the citizens of King County go everywhere else in this state. And you're sitting down there saying, our life is screwed because of you guys. You know what? I have a good idea. Why don't we stop giving you guys any of our tax money? That section of 5, you know what? We'll just give ourselves Interstate 5 passes. You guys can pay a road toll and the rest of us will be able to drive on through, right? Like, who pays for your crap? We do, right? Like,
Joe and I are shaking our heads, yes. You should move to New Jersey.
Oh man, no, East Coast road toll taxes, I hate them. I have I hate them. I've been to New Jersey. I've driven around there, and I'm like, what's happening right now? What's this thing we're coming up on? Is this some kind of border? What? They want money?
No, it's just not as bad as nowhere near as bad as it used to be. They did away with a lot of them.
I mean, but it seems like that when you don't have those, because we don't have anything like that. The worst we have is a lane on I-405 that if you're a rich person, you can pay to drive in that lane all the time, you know. So.
I just wanted to circle back to what Brian and Rob were both talking about a moment ago. If aliens could be a unifying factor with humanity, and Brian said COVID could be that alien unifying factor. And here's the thing: I know it's cliche, but I mean, the problem is it's microscopic, right? And no matter
can't shoot it.
Scary artist rendition globes with little spiky things sticking out. It's never going to be scary enough because those things aren't going to come over the hill, globbing up your house.
Yep.
Right?
So it's sad that
the problem is we don't have the
only unified in violence. We're not unified.
Isn't as scary as an alien invasion actually would be. If the sky opened up and shit started coming right down right now, I'd scream like a 6-year-old child. Right, for sure.
So basically what you're saying is it's only unifying to the species if we can shoot at it.
Yes, like we're only unified in violence.
I take the joke, but what I'm basically saying is people are insufficiently scared of this virus to make it a unifying factor.
It's true. I agree.
Yeah, I take your point as well.
I want to amend, not amend. I want to retract what I said about an alien invasion. I would, because I was thinking about it. You know what would happen is different countries would try to communicate with them and try to bargain with them to be in their favor. Did you guys watch the movie? Oh my God!
Oh my God! You're trying to talk about a movie and you can't even remember the name of it. Oh God!
Broadly, you could use the plot of V to achieve the same.
No, not even V. There was a movie recently where all the big egg things came down and everybody tried to talk with them, with the aliens, and
them.
No.
You're talking about the one with Jodie Foster.
They had the circular language. They had the circular language.
That was the one with Natalie Portman, I thought. Where they
had no real concept of linear time, where their time and their language were both present tense, past, and future at the same time.
Yes, I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember its name.
Towards the end of the movie, they were all different countries talking to the aliens, and then the aliens, and then all of a sudden, China stopped communicating. And everybody was just like, oh shit, what happened? That's the kind of thing that would happen. Different countries would try to bargain with the aliens for arrival. And that
I shall have to look that one out.
Yeah, Amy Adams was the translator, and
it's a really good movie, but it's not a lot of action.
Right.
Like, if you don't mind sitting and absorbing story.
It's British. They're used to that. They actually have a cerebral populace. But the thing about like where Sister Danger was talking about, about the upstanders, downstanders. The one thing that I feel that one of the benefits of having more free travel is that as people go other places, maybe even move and bring new ideas, learn new ideas where they go. It can create tension at first, but we talked about the cities. Yeah, they're more diverse because people ended up there, and people tend to be more tolerant because they're exposed to more. And so I think if you have more free movement, I think like the only way you're ever going to see like the more sectarian Middle Eastern countries, for example, get better is if there's more, immigration of outside ideas. Because right now they're very insular societies.
Can I ask a question with relation to freedom of movement?
What's that?
Can I ask a question with relation to freedom of movement?
So what I'm saying?
Well, you were mentioning freedom of movement and how you think that the more that happens, the better it is which I agree with actually, because it does cause ideas to cross. I don't want to say the word contaminate because that makes it sound bad, but perpetuate widely. however, so what do you think about this idea? So right now, a place that is a private, say a private club, or let's say a Mormon church, right? A temple, right? If you are not Mormon and they cannot verify that, you do not get to go into temple. You don't get to go in, like, that's it. Like, you can't come in, they stop you. Like, nope, no going in, you're not a Mormon. What do you think about, let's take this idea of freedom of movement and people being able to go everywhere, but clutches of people that want to preserve specifically what they perceive as their culture and belief system. Therefore, the Mormon church goes out and we'll say, hypothetically, they buy up 100,000 square kilometers or miles of land, right? And they decide that unless you're Mormon, you don't get to come into their religious temple, their religious land. And what happens? So I'm just saying, like, how would you perceive to maybe deal with groups or organizations of people banding together, buying property with the express purpose of being able to keep out who they don't want to keep out, but still continue to get the benefits of government and commerce?
It's just like having your own house, though.
Except,
I mean, and it's actually already in place. Both the Mormons and the Scientologists. I mean, they've already done that in big swaths of territory. So we know what that's like. Unfortunately, because our society gives far too much reverence to religion, even though it says specifically in the first fucking amendment not to. But so as a result, we kind of let that slide. But it's hard because certainly if it is somebody's private property, yeah, they can tell you to get the fuck off their private property.
But now my church is the Church of Joel Osteen, where what we value is money and being rich. And so if you don't subscribe to that and you don't make enough money at the proper level, you don't get to come into our gated neighborhood. Like, this essentially allows people to...
That's not new. That happens now.
Should it be happening?
Well, I mean, it already does happen. No, that's the thing. I think I don't know that there's any way. I don't know there's any way to do in order to keep a society free. I don't think there's any way to avoid it. I mean,
yeah, the thing is the people that live in those areas, and one, they choose to live in those isolated areas. That's number one. Number two is the world outside of their isolated area continues to do whatever the world is going to do. And those people that live there are going to be affected by it, and it's going to rub off on them. And they themselves, like the people who decided to live there, may not be affected, but their children may be. And that's the kind of cross-contamination kind of a thing.
Pollinate, says Badger.
Yeah, I mean, because I was thinking when the topic first came up, I was thinking that was the entire strategy of the Obama administration with relaxing regulations and restrictions with Cuba. The idea is that through friendly commerce, we will change their government.
Right. Because we know that 50 years of embargo did dick. It didn't work whatsoever. And all it did was to lock American businesses out when Canadian businesses and European businesses were doing business anyway. And the reality is you can't have an embargo if you're the only one participating in the embargo, even if you're in the United States. And the irony of it, too, is what brought down the Iron Curtain. It wasn't guns or arms. It was commerce. It was opening up. Gorbachev says, "Yeah, we're going to be a little bit more open. We'll have trade with the West, and we'll talk to one another." And in no time, I mean, I started college, and the wall was up, and before I left college, everything had changed in that period of time.
I mean, people talk about the fear of communist China. Communist China isn't all that communist.
No.
There's a lot of capitalism floating around inside China. Big, red, scary communist China. Lots of, and the people that live there, I mean, yeah, it's not the United States, obviously. And yeah, there's a lot of really sketchy shit, and I wouldn't want to live there, and I don't think anybody should have to live under that kind of rule. But at the same time, they've got a lot of the comforts of the West, and people technically have a fair amount of ability to have some control over their
There's
lives.
loads
At
of
least in the
Chinese
city.
cities. There's loads of Chinese cities that look way further into the 21st century than any place in America that I've seen. If you look at Wuhan, for example, the whole fucking city, all the buildings and bridges and everything can turn into a fucking massive light show that's like miles wide. I'm not even kidding.
Wuhan, I knew that this virus was
and,
biological. I knew it. This is warfare.
and that's the thing, because right now,
That's
it's
cool,
funny,
though, by the way.
whenever I talk to people who I know they come from an insulated part of the United States, and the stuff they say about, foreign countries and their attitudes, and it's like, I know they've never been there. The only thing they know is they saw a National Geographic from 1962. It's way out of date. Jon Stewart, when he was still the host of the Daily Show, he showed two pictures side by side, and was showing roads, and it said, okay, one of them you see a road that's modern and new and everything's beautiful, and another one was all fucked up and broken and everything. He's like, one of these is in Africa and the other's in New York City. Which do you think it is? And he's like, wrong. The fucked up roads were in New York City, and apart from New York City, part of it's logistics, just that in order to fix things, you have to shut down roads that literally 180,000 people have to drive through in a 2-hour period. But there's a lot of places around the world that are far more modern than we have any idea. But people here, because a lot of Americans don't travel, a lot of Americans don't even leave their own state, let alone go to another country. So they really have no concept of what it's like anywhere else.
New York City, the entire city is like sitting on like the brink of multiple collapses from engineering. The city is so old and so crowded and so busy, that like people think that Central Park was always there, and they don't realize that Central Park is like an engineering masterpiece. I mean, it is a marvel of engineering science. Those waterfalls aren't there naturally.
What?
That's not real. The lakes and ponds, they're not real. I mean, yeah, they're really water, but they were put there by someone, and the water is piped in, and it's been being piped in for like 200 years, and the pipes have never been changed.
Have you ever read the book The World Without Us? Or even heard of it?
No, but I've seen a TV show that was inspired by it.
Oh, I didn't even know there was a TV show. But the book is really good, and it talks about places like New York City, the subway system, and just how long it would take if basically humans disappeared entirely, how long it would take for that. And it was like 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks, that subway system would flood, and then just things everywhere would start collapsing. It's pretty fascinating.
If you've ever seen, there's been videos of like Chernobyl, because Chernobyl was was abandoned in the city. I forget the name of the city that's right close to it, but basically, like, that happened like 25 years ago, 30 years ago now, and there's so much of it that you couldn't even tell humans ever lived there.
In Greece, there's places like that also in Greece. I can't think of the name of the shoreline, but there's a place that was meant to be a resort, and they came in, they started building huge hotels, kind of like like you see in Florida, where they're along the shoreline, and then apparently like global commerce changed. They decided it wasn't profitable, and they just stopped. And therefore, everybody that had moved there in order to be a part of the construction crews, like everybody just left, and now it's just there. Whatever they had started building is just left abandoned, right? They don't tear things down, and it's crazy that we do that.
Well, but I was thinking about the point about opening things up. Nixon was at 72. Nixon goes to China, and China was very communist back then, and just really think about it, in 50 years now, or less than 50 years, they're they're authoritarian, but they're not. I mean, they do have somewhat of a planned economy in that, like, they will open up places, like they'll make sure like there's a dentistry, even in places where it's not economically viable to have one and shit like that. But for the most part, they are very market capitalism. And that never would have happened if we didn't like show up and say, hi, we're going to talk to you and hang out and start trading with you and stuff.
I mean, it behooves them to do that because people that are generally happy and healthy have a much higher work output. So if you're looking to make money,
They're less likely to revolt too.
yes, they are.
Yeah, when I was working like in the early '90s, we were competing. Company I worked for in aroma chemicals, we were competing with the Chinese that decided to get into the market, and somebody that I worked with had dealt with some of the Chinese, and they'd come over and they looked at the process, and then they were and they were like kicking our pants on price. They're like $2 a pound cheaper. And somebody had talked to this guy, and the guy's like, "Wow, you guys could make so much more money if you could raise your price, still kick our ass, and you'd make a lot more money." And at the time, because they still had the communist mindset, they didn't know why you'd want to do that. Like, they didn't get that. Like, well, we only need this much. Like, yeah, but you could get more. So if we're selling for $6 a pound, you could sell for $5.50, still win, but you're selling it for $4, and you could have that much more money. You'd have that much more wealth in your country, and everybody would have more. And it took them a decade and a half to get that under their head, but they did.
I often I mean, as you probably all know, we've been on the hunt for some place to move where we want property and whatever's, and that's like been a thing that we've been doing. But it's strange because I guess when I imagine it in my head, I always, part of my huge personal motivation, as opposed to just the business motivation, because there's both, my personal motivation is that I love the idea of being able to be self-sufficient. So wherever we move, right, I would like to be able to know that for the people who live in this place, we can grow that food, we can do those things, or at least have and I wonder why it is that I feel that urge, right? I mean, I don't know if that's
probably a combination of nature and nurture.
I mean, or is it safety? Is it that I feel that while the modern world has many things to offer, they're all tenuous. That if something were to collapse, I would be left defenseless. And I feel that if I were to, the closer I can get to being able to say living off the grid, right? The more that I don't have to worry about being destroyed in an economical collapse.
Yeah,
and
I'm completely the opposite. I don't want to get off the grid. I want to be more on the grid. I'm like, get an extension cord for my grid. I mean, you think about this as a practical matter. I mean, I
don't actually want to be off the grid. I should say that. I mean, I'm not quite that hippie.
Yeah, but I mean, because I take multiple prescriptions that are required for me to live. Like if I had to stop taking my diabetes medicine or my hypertension medicine, I wouldn't last very long. So for me, it's like, no, the technological world is what keeps me alive, literally keeps me alive. And may keep me alive, based on my recent medical exam, may keep me alive for a lot longer than I expected. But yeah, so that's why I don't understand people who I want to get off the grid and they're out in the middle of nowhere building yurts and shit. And I'm like shitting in a bucket. Like
I used to be that guy, Joe. I totally used to be that guy.
Really?
But yeah, man, before I had my wife and kids and stuff, and I used to be a young DJ with aspirations of getting a 6-figure salary and then going and retiring at 40, right? And I wanted to live off the grid. I wanted to go buy myself a plot somewhere in, I don't know, Manitoba or someplace where there's a lot of fucking space, man. And you can have your own water supply, so you can have a house with a fucking mill on it, okay, generating electricity.
Well, yeah.
Windmill, right? You could have a chicken farm and some goats for milk and cheese, right? You could grow all your own vegetables. You could have a greenhouse, blah, 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 blah. You could pump the water directly out of the goddamn ground because it's Canada, and there used to be an ice age there not that long ago, right? So
I love this all so much. I love all of that, but I also want internet, and I also kind of would love to have a house that had floor heating. Sorry, go ahead, Patrick.
So I was just going to observe that both of your both of your drives, inner drives, yeah, yours and Joe's, speaks to again. I mentioned it earlier. Survival dictates, but in Joe's case, it's literal. Yeah, his survival dictates he remain close to technology and medical science. But in your case, certainly my interpretation of it is that you're speaking to a much more primal safety
Yeah, man.
of your continued
He wants a lot of fucking
survival.
space. He wants a lot of fucking space, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's like instead of being dependent upon others for resources, if you've got your own resources, then your survival is assured.
yes, or at least closer to
Well,
assured,
see,
right?
Or closer to
Yeah.
assured, yeah.
Also for me, because my job vocational skills also lie in technology, so it's like
Yeah, that too.
So because I thought about it sometimes, Suzanne, because she likes she likes more nature and being more like Paul, like being in the middle of nowhere, and I don't. But part of the reason why we never did, beyond the fact that I would hate it and kill myself, but is that like the job prospects and the business prospects are horrible because there's just not as much stuff to do, business wise and technology wise.
But in regards of the grid per se,
Yeah.
you're both trapped because the internet.
Well, this is why
It's
I
here.
don't actually
It
want to-
exists.
yeah. This is
It's
why I don't
rural.
actually want
It's
to be-
urban.
Yeah.
It's cross-border.
I
don't actually want to
perfectly
be
well
off the
remember my
internet.
life before the
I
internet.
want to be away from people.
I'm just fine without it.
Oh, so do I.
I would actually hate living without the internet because I've been online for 23 years now, and it's in fact almost coming up on 24 years in a couple of months. And for me, it's literally just part of most of my social life was on the internet for many, many years, especially when I was single, in fact, if it wasn't for the fact of, my YouTube channel, I wouldn't know any of you guys, obviously. So, yeah.
I got my first computer in 1981. So it's literally been 40 years for me, being and going down the road that I'm on.
Yeah, me too. My first ever computer was this little Pong game that my dad gave us in the 70s.
Yeah.
But from that moment on, my direction into computing was assured.
I mean, I remember when a 1200 baud modem came out, and we were like, "Wow, the speed!"
I just want to say something to a commenter real quick. I want to bring this up. Green Machine says, having your own well isn't so great these days. Nestle can drill one right next door and dry you up in a week. God, I hope not, because we have our own well.
And that's something that also I find perverse. Again, I mean, obviously, I'm technologist and I'm industrialist and all that shit, but I find that the leadership at Nestle is perverse. This idea that they're angry at the idea that water is a human right, something that we literally need to survive. There's very few things that we actually literally need to survive. We need caloric intake, we need water, and we need shelter from the elements, and that's everything else is gravy. And to actually say, well, one of that triad, no, and the thing about it, worst of it is, it's not even like. Because they always advertise like it's a spring. It's not spring. They're literally drawing tap water, the same fucking tap water that you and I drink, and they're running it through filters and reselling it back to the rest of us. I'm almost to the point where I'm not even sure it should even be allowed.
It's bad enough that the majority of the water resources are tied up and sold to us by corporate entities in the first place, let alone if you have your own source and it gets deliberately pilfered like that.
Here's we have a well, water right out of the ground, right to the tap. It's clean, it's cold, straight out of the ground. we have an acre of land, so nobody's gonna suck my well dry. I got a big enough piece
Whoa,
of
whoa, whoa! We don't need to know about your personal life.
So
Yeah, I mean, you keep your water table to yourself, mate.
so we buy bottled water.
I'm a terrible person. I know. I'm a bad Perry. Bad Perry.
We have all the free water we want. We buy bottled water.
Why?
I don't know.
I mean, I can see buying containers that you could refill and carry around, but I wouldn't spend money on water when you got clean water for free.
You're a sheep, Dev. I'm going to say it. You're a sheep.
You know.
Actually, in my own defense, it's more Peach than me.
Might I suggest some reasons that happens, though? Might I suggest? So here are some reasons that I could imagine that somebody with perfectly clean water from their tap, which, by the way, I didn't realize for a long time until I began to travel outside of Washington and Oregon, that the water in the rest of even the United States, let alone the world, does not taste. We have exceedingly good water here in Washington and Oregon. And it is not like that everywhere else in the United States, like not even in the US. And I didn't even know that was a thing.
Well,
so,
but
just for example, water in a bottle, you can just take that, like you get it, you grab it from the thing, you go to your desk or to wherever what you're doing. It comes with a cap, so you can screw the cap back on, you just drink the water, you do the thing. You can take it in your car with you. It fits into the cup holder in your car without question, right? Like there's no car, right? Like all these weird little conveniences of water in a bottle.
You can buy a reusable vessel and just fill up with your water. So
reusable vessels are not all the same size, and they do not all fit into the cup holder of your car.
You can shop around. But here's the thing: before you go, Brian, real quick, because I actually one of the many industries that I work with, I actually do work with water treatment. And the sad part is the fact that a lot of water doesn't taste good. People are like, oh, the water here isn't good. It's not the water. The water leaves the water treatment plant beautiful. The problem is that the pipe infrastructure is ancient. In some places, it's still made of wood.
Yes, that is absolutely.
You have a century and a half of crap that built up as leaching back into the water, or you may have lead pipes, or you may have all sorts of disgusting things.
They call it siege in.
If we actually spent the money on the water infrastructure, replace all the pipes with concrete lined pipes, the water would taste wonderful. And everywhere in the country, the water would taste wonderful.
Solution to that, socialism. Sorry to say it, but the other what was the other thing I was going to say? Damn it! I hate it when that happens.
All right, so a green machine. An acre won't protect you. It's not so much the acre that protects me; it's the laws in the state that protect me. So, I live in a residential neighborhood. Nestle or anyone else cannot legally open a plant here. It's against the law. They can't because it's a residential neighborhood. So it's the law that protects me. So,
and I've remembered what it was with regards to your perpetual use of bottled waters. All those microplastics pollinating the seas.
That was horrifying. I need a shower.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean, that's why and the sad part is the amount of money we spend every year on bottled water just in the United States. I did the math out. You could replace every single pipe in the United States in 25 years on what we spend. The amount annually we spend. If you spent that same amount on fixing the water infrastructure, everything would be completely changed over in 25 years. So for no more money, and then once you did that, you basically want to be on about a 50-year cycle. Because that's about the period where the pipes are going to start to, get passivated and bad things, they're crumbling and all.
I have a friend that's a germaphobe, and they buy bottled water and have for their whole life that I've known them for more than 20 years because I wouldn't.
Bottled water is no more safe for a germaphobe than tap water because it's tap water.
But in here to them it is, and so they refuse to drink their tap water and will only drink their bottled water. I buy bottled water only for the purpose because we drink our tap water here. Like, why we already pay for our tap water, so why pay for more water in bottles? But I actually buy it when we do things like go camping. And I also keep bottled water in the back of my car because I'm a little bit of a prepper in that way. Like, I have a go bag. I have like a 5-gallon thing of gasoline that is filled, that's ready to go, things like that I keep in my car. Also for my pets, because I have 2 travel cats that go with me everywhere. So I have water in my travel trailer with my little teardrop trailer. And then I also have a flat of water in my car that I use for the cats.
I think if I were paying for the water, then yeah, I would probably definitely, drink it.
Yeah.
But when you don't pay for something, you have less value for it.
I just find it hard to think that people don't pay for it though, because I'm sorry, but this capitalist America and everybody pays for everything somewhere.
I wanted to talk about what Joe was talking about as far as like big, massive projects like fixing the pipes, but also I wanted to say that. Yeah, I had a couple of internet fights with people trying to convince them that, yeah, I just go into my kitchen, turn the water on, and I never pay for the water. And they're like, no way, not possible. But I'm like, no, really.
Where were they from?
It just comes right out of the ground. There are a lot of people in this country that just never heard of well water.
Well, and that's actually one thing I was actually the next thing I wanted to mention is the fact that one thing that appalls me, and it's part of the reason why our system is so fucked up, is that most people have no idea how any of the utilities are delivered to them. They have no clue. They don't know where their water. They don't know about well water. They don't know, and basically you've got surface water, you got groundwater, and you have aquifer. And most people have no idea what any of the fuck, unless they've only actually has their own well. They have no fucking clue of any of that stuff.
So what I wanted to say was, because you were talking about replacing all the pipes, in the U.S., because I know Brian is, not in the U.S. The rest of us are. But so in the U.S., in our 240 something years, every so often we've gone through these big, huge, massive, like engineering bursts, right? Where all of a sudden we're building fucking everything. If you can name it, we're inventing it and building and doing it. We're just doing the thing. It's been a while since we've done the thing. COVID was a beautiful opportunity to do a whole bunch of things, and we didn't.
Yeah.
Pipes.
Yet.
We've.
The thing is, I think in many
already been lost.
I don't know if they have though, because Americans
electricity.
They gotta see.
No, but see, like the roads, for one, since back in like April and May and June, nobody was on the damn roads. Nobody. The roads were empty. So there was a great time to do a lot of road infrastructure projects. And now, I mean, when I have to foray out, there's almost as much traffic as normal now. So it's too late.
When it comes to the roads, I agree, opportunity lost.
Yeah.
But when it comes to other infrastructure like pipes and electricity and other utility resource delivery and waste removal, when everybody's sheltering at home and using those more than they would normally, it's probably not a good time to be doing that.
Hey,
that's true. And beyond that, Rob made a good point about how the fact that we kind of do these things in spurts, and it's really like a bad idea actually to do it that way. What happens is we kind of wait and wait and wait. It's I forget what the dilemma is. So it's a gambler's thing that basically I'll just keep pushing it because it didn't break today, so maybe it'll still work tomorrow. And then eventually what ends up happening is a whole bunch of shit is broken all at once, and then we're stuck and we have to spend ridiculous amounts of money.
That's how I traded all of my cars when I was like 18.
Yeah, but exactly. The thing about it is that people. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
And it's not just the government; it's industry too. I do work over at the refinery here in Linden. Rob knows it. Knows which one I'm talking about. And basically, they've got 100 controllers. The types of controllers they're using, you would expect you really should replace them about every 15 years, but if you're going to push it 20. But if you have 100 controllers and they last 20 years, that means you need to be replacing 5 a year just to keep up. That means if you start today and replace this one, 20 years from now, you'll just have completed the last ones, and you're going to have to go back and do the first ones again. But they're not doing that. They're doing maybe one or two, which means eventually what's going to happen, there's going to be a year where a whole bunch of shit's going to go tits up.
But that's what I was saying too about New York City. Everything in New York City, they're same thing. They're facing multiple failures on multiple fronts at any time.
Right.
Time.
And the longer it goes, that's right. And the longer it goes, the more likely it is you're not going to get a single failure. You're going to get multiple failures, even cascade failures. And if this refinery goes down for more than a week, everyone's gas is going to go up $2 a gallon. So and they make money hand over fist. So there's no reason not to do it. And plus the fact that if you have to do it in an emergency, it's going to cost more. Plus the fact that instead of doing it, you're going to be doing it in future dollars and all this, the prices are going to keep going up. So if they just planned for it and just did it as a rolling thing, it would be they would never have any outages. But that's not how they do things, and that's not how that's not how we make our government do it now. Unfortunately.
When it comes to pushing it to the brink, I think that word you were looking for was brinkmanship. We over here, you'll know about this, Paul. There's a bridge that typifies ongoing maintenance. It's called the Forth Bridge,
right?
And it's a bridge that crosses mainland England into Wales. And basically, their maintenance regime on that is such that when they've finished painting from one end to the other, it's time to go back to the beginning and start painting it all over again.
I thought that Wales was literally on the same island of land that all of England is.
It is, but there is a huge chunk of it that's broken away from the mainland.
I did not know that.
Connection with Cornwall and the southwest of England.
Okay, I didn't know that.
It's connected in the middle, but the southern Wales, there's a huge gaping channel there.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Now, and that's the thing. A lot of people probably think that's ridiculous. They think, "Oh, this is so ridiculous; it just never stop." But no, that's actually the right way to do it.
Yeah, and that is one of the safest. That is one of the safest bridges in this country, and it carries an awful lot of traffic.
The GW bridge, they're supposed to
4 or 5 lanes each side.
That's the same kind of
huge.
What'd you say, Rob?
That's the same kind of schedule the GW is supposed to have.
George Washington Bridge, for anybody not in the area.
Yeah, George Washington.
The George Washington Bridge goes from New Jersey to Uptown, like Harlem.
Wait, what?
The George Washington Bridge goes from
Harlem is in New York, right?
Was that?
Harlem is in New York. Yes. George Washington Bridge.
What is Uptown?
Uptown is so basically downtown is the south end of New York City. Uptown is the north end of New York City.
Okay, like most of New York City, not all of it, because it's actually like 8 boroughs. It's 8 cities.
Yeah.
But like most of New York City is on an island. Yeah, 5 boroughs. I'm sorry. Is on an island, Manhattan Island, the island of Manhattan. Right, most of New York City. Some of it kind of spreads onto the island, but most
actually 3 islands.
What's Coney Island?
Nassau.
Right.
Right. So anyway, it's on an island. So in order to get there from New Jersey, you need a bridge.
Gotcha.
Actually, there's several bridges. But most of the people who live or who work in New York are from New Jersey or from Connecticut, and they rely on those bridges. Ask Tommy; he'll know about the bridges.
I feel like such a airhead for not knowing this, but I've really only ever. I feel like such an airhead for not knowing things about my own country, if that makes any sense. But also, I think I've only been in New York proper physically for brief drive-throughs where I wasn't driving and probably sleeping for most of the little trip. But I flew over the Statue of Liberty. I'm afraid of New York City. So.
Statue of Liberty is in New Jersey.
Yeah, and actually, don't feel bad, Amy, because literally most people don't know. They go to Manhattan, they think, "Oh, I've been to New York City." You're like, "No, you've been to Manhattan." That's part of New York City. It's just a little part of New York City. It's the most famous part of New York City, but it's just one part of New York City.
Avoid New York City though. Like in all of my travels, New York City is not a place that I am particularly interested in. I'm just, it kind of scares me. It's too metropolis for me, right? Like I get weirded out. So when I was in London
I
was
love
like
it.
and LA was like this. Like you can go up to the highest point in that city or whatever, and you can look out and all you see is more city. You don't see the landscape somewhere beyond a city line. You don't see mountains. You don't whatever. And that, like, for some reason, trips my little brain out. And I don't like to go to places where people are so packed in and I can't get away. I feel like a weird claustrophobia by not being able to get out of a city, which is weird because I've been buried and nailed into a coffin while I was awake for a movie.
New York City
Didn't bother me, but cities,
So New York City would be especially hard for you because you can't just get, it's an island.
But like London was so good though, because in London, holy smokes, man, unlike anywhere I've ever been, London and Paris both, you can just go underground, get on the tube, and go anywhere, right? You're like, oh, I want to go to this place. I didn't know. I just look at this map. Great, I'm there. Like,
You can do that in New York City. The thing now, New York City is split basically. Manhattan and the Bronx are on Manhattan Island. Staten Kings County, Staten Island is on its own island, Staten Island, and Brooklyn and Queens are on Long Island. Actually, they're actually to the west side of. There's Long Island the place, and there's Long Island the island. And so two of the boroughs of New York City are on the island of Long Island. Yes, it's very confusing for people who aren't from here. But yeah, and actually each one of those boroughs is a county. So whereas most counties have cities in them, New York City is composed of 5 counties.
I have a question.
Sure.
What island is Central Park on?
Manhattan Island.
That's on Manhattan Island.
that's the big island.
The big island. Yeah, so yeah, most people, when you see pictures of New York City, you're almost always seeing pictures of Manhattan.
The big island, big island is Hawaii. That's
I knew that.
I was thinking the same
I
thing.
knew it.
Pretty far away.
over the other.
Hey, listen, I got to interrupt, crew, because I want to wind the conversation down because we need to have an after conversation as well, and it's already 3:11, and I don't want to go past 3:30. So, I want to ask you guys all a personal question, if that's all right.
Sure.
I mean, we just talked about sex
All right, I'm gonna
4 hours, 3 episodes ago. So
You know, 4 hours is pretty much my limit. So if I stop at 3.5, then I can party with y'all for a little while after. I love my people, and not everything needs to be broadcast. Anyway,
Especially the sex stuff.
amen to that. But yeah, so what was I gonna say? Oh yeah,
Censorship.
Tommy from the Bronx. Since we haven't heard from you for a while, I want you to give me. I want the whole gang to go. From Tommy, we'll go underneath and around and end up with me. Okay. So Tommy, Brian, Joe, etc. Tommy, top 3 bucket list items. Drum roll.
wait, for 2021 or your whole life?
Your whole life.
Okay.
Bucket list. Yeah.
Definitely one of them is Grand Canyon, because you guys brought that up earlier. I really want to go see that. I don't know. I've done a lot of things. Go to Italy. I've never been there. I'm Italian, so maybe
You will
that.
love it. Italy is amazing. You'll love it. Go there. Do it.
It is amazing.
And meet every single one of you people. How about that? There you go.
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, I've got 3 of us. 3 people on here I've been already.
Yeah, I've met Joe. Give great hugs, by the way. So
Thank you.
yeah. So yeah, top 3 all-time bucket list items. Well, yeah, Grand Canyon. That's been on there forever. The next two have changed somewhat over the years. Number two, I reckon, is to take Exiled for a couple of weeks to Sandals in Jamaica. All expenses just, spoiled rotten for
Right.
2 weeks. The shit that she's been through in the last 5 years, I think she deserves that.
Yeah,
I love her,
Um,
by the way. Please give her my regards. Like, I know
I
her.
will do.
Like,
I will do.
yeah, same.
I think realistically, I'd have to crowdfund it. I don't know how that would go, so yeah, stick it on the bucket list. But one that I really, I'm going to be putting all the stops towards is to live close enough to my grandson, who's going to be a year old this month, so that I can be a proper granddad to him.
That's sweet.
That is a really good answer. What about you, Joe?
Okay. I hope you probably guys are going to jump on me for this. I actually have made a conscious decision not to have one. And it's not that I don't have that. There's nothing I want to do. There's tons of things I want to do. I want to go to Italy. I've never been there. I want to go back to Germany. I want to make several trips back to the UK and to Ireland. I want to get to. I've never been to Scotland or Wales, and there's still parts of England proper I haven't been to. I would probably, there's a small part of me that would like to go to Mexico, and there's a small part of me that would like to go to Asia, go to India and maybe China. I would like to go to Africa and go to and particularly Nigeria, go to the point of no return, because that was the spot where most of the slaves, regardless of what country they came through, that was where they would get processed through and went through. So I know I have many ancestors that came through there, and I'd like to be there. But the reason why I don't have a specific bucket list is the same. It kind of comes from my philosophy from when we go on vacations, because I used to go on vacations and I used to feel obligated to do certain things. Here I have to do something, and I would never take a day to just relax or do something frivolous or whatever. And I was always on a schedule, and I realized that it was becoming work, and I wasn't enjoying. I wasn't, I was thinking I would have some fun, but it was also stressful. And then so when we went,
that's a choice, isn't it, Joe?
That's
a choice, isn't it?
Well, right, but see, that's the thing, though, is I was obligating myself,
right, and
that was I realized that was a mistake. That the whole point of having experiences is to appreciate them and enjoy them. And so like when you and I met, Paul and Brian, that trip we made to England. So basically, we did have some must-haves. There's things that we got to do. These 5 or 6 things. Suzanne had her list, I had my list, and then we had a bunch of things we would like to do. But, we didn't put too much pressure. So we basically worked the schedule. That's okay. We can definitely see the must-haves. And then we actually modified the schedule as we went. We made some changes, and some of the must-have. We got all our must-haves. I think we might have actually even dropped one. We just decided, actually Bath. We went to Bath, and the city was chock-a-block full of traffic, and there was too many tourists. And we said, fuck it. It was getting stressful.
Such a beautiful city.
And we said, no, it's too stressful. The whole point is to have fun. And we added some things, and we just took it easy. It was literally the best vacation I ever took in my life. So I realized, this is the way. So, like the Mandalorian. So basically now I've got a bunch of things I would like to do, and what I don't want to do to myself is make myself have to do certain things, because what if those things turn out to be disappointing? What if or worse yet, what if I can't do them? I don't want to die feeling like, I never got to do that one thing that was on my list. I'd rather, have a bunch of things and be eclectic, get as many of them in as I can as a practical matter. And if I miss anything I don't miss, I won't have any regrets about it that I didn't do. As long as the things I did were fulfilling, I win.
What about you, sister?
So I feel like I'm actually a little bit terrible at doing stuff like this. Excuse me, my ear itches really fast. Okay, wearing these headphones makes the inside of my ear itch. So I'm constantly like sticking my finger in my ear. But I want to caveat it by saying that I don't know if I fully understand what a bucket list is supposed to be in reference
Bucket
to.
list is like things you want to do before you kick the bucket.
Okay, before you kick the bucket. Okay, so before I kick the bucket, there are at least two things that come to mind immediately before I kick the bucket. One is I want to see The Hague at the Netherlands because that is my last name, and I want to go and walk in the place of my namesake, and then also see a whole bunch of the Netherlands as well, and because I just think it looks awesome. And I'm actually super okay with the Netherlands wanting to basically be Clan La Sombra behind, you know, Donald Trump. And if you don't understand what I mean by the Clan La Sombra reference, well, then that's okay. You just continue on your path. And so, if you do, so also, I want to, before the end of my life, I would actually like to publish a book in philosophy. I would like to write on philosophy. And there are many, many topics that interest me. One of the philosophy topics that interests me a lot is basically bioethics, where biology advancement meets legal ethical standards and that kind of thing. What's legal anyway, whatever, it doesn't matter if you're not interested in that stuff. It's very boring and dry for most people for reading philosophy, but I would love to publish a book on philosophy. So whether that's self-published or published, I don't actually care. I just want to do the thing, write the thing, feel proud of having done the thing. And as for number 3, I feel like my number 3 must be in the category of Sirius's I want to be eclectic. I don't know that I can actually I don't know that I can actually narrow it down to being a single third thing, because there are many things in life that I would love to, like, I've never been skydiving. I would love to go skydiving. I would love to go cliff jumping in one of those squirrel suits where you're just like, I hope I don't die, but it'll be great if I do. Somebody get this on YouTube. Like, you know, like, whatever. Like, I mean, there are tons of like places I've never been that, you know, even though the Netherlands kind of tops my list, I want to see things like I want to see, you know, where the Babylonian gardens were, or the Great Pyramids of Egypt. I want to go, you know, all around Cambodia and the jungles and look at this, like, these things here. I want to see places that I read about in poetry or I listen to in the lyrics of music that is just pop culture, you know, like, you know, what is Ibiza like? What is Morocco like? I mean, I don't even know, right? Like, I've never been to these places. I want to go to all of them, see them, experience, be immersed, you know, in them. There's just so many things. So I guess, like, I have to leave my number 3 open to being like all the freaking things, because as much as I sit here and I'm like, I'm kind of scared of New York City. Don't get me wrong. I might be a little afraid to venture into New York City, and I might kind of avoid it. But really, I will go there. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, if it comes down to, well, are you gonna go there or not? I'll go there. Like, I'm there.
If you make it, I'll take you around.
If there's the opportunity, I will take the opportunity. Doesn't matter if I don't like it. Doesn't matter if I'm a little bit worried because I can't see the rest of the world from the metropolis. I will still effing go there, right? Like,
certainly safer than Detroit or Chicago.
No, I will do the thing. That's pretty much me. I mean, even though there are some things that I'm like, I don't know if that's the best idea. Literally, give me like 2 shots of vodka and then be like, I triple dog dare you. And I'll be like, fuck you. Like, we're in. Like, we're like, well, you thought it was a joke. I'm calling you out. That's how it works. Anyway.
What about you, kids?
I normally don't think about that, so it's kind of it's putting me on the spot a bit. I kind of take the stance that Sirius does about it. You know, I don't want to poison the idea of if I was dying, you know, am I going to regret not doing certain things rather than, well, anyway. But I guess a place I would love to see is New Zealand. I want to. Not only for the beauty of the area, but to experience the culture, because it just seems to be a more laid back culture than here. They're not nearly as in the rat race as we are here, and yet they also speak English, so I'd be able to communicate with people. So that's always been a curious thing. Another thing would be if I'm somehow ever able to make a song that can make it somewhere in the charts somewhere, even if it's number 200. Okay, great, that's fine. But just to have a song that makes it that big, that's another thing I'd love to do. And then I'd love to see the castles in Germany. Totally.
Truth.
Cool.
I'm over here all excited on mute. Like, yeah. If you ever want to do that and go together and share a room and cut our costs, I'm in. And I can travel. I have a passport. And I know people in Germany that will house us, at least that live in the area of the Black Forest. So,
cool.
But, yeah.
Checkmate.
Okay. So I actually have some interesting ones. Number one that I've always wanted to do would be to celebrate Chinese New Year with my friends in Taiwan. And the reason why is I have a lot of Taiwanese friends that I met here that I became really close to. I've connected with them for years. I've actually visited the country at least twice, but I want to celebrate their holiday. I think that would be awesome. I've already been in Korea and celebrated the Korean New Year and their holidays, but I want to do the Chinese New Year. I want to experience that. On that same line, number 2, Oktoberfest in Germany.
Okay, so that's three of us that need to go to Germany.
And then number 3, well, I got a 3 and a kind of a 3.1. So number 3, there's been certain celebrities that I really love that I'd like to meet. But then the 3.1 would be meeting all my online friends that I've been talking to for years and I haven't met yet. That includes this group.
I am so with that. I would love to meet everybody.
All right, so I went most of my life without having a bucket list until I was diagnosed with HIV. Then I developed one really quick. And it included things, and I don't have it anymore. I kind of ditched the list when I realized I'm going to be, an old person. So fuck HIV. So, but my list included things like skydiving. One was just driving a Corvette. I've never driven a Corvette. I want to drive a Corvette. That kind of a thing. That was my bucket list. Now, something I want to do before I die, so this will count as my number 3, I guess, is I'd like to travel and see ruins. I want to see the ruins in Central America. I want to go to Italy. I want to see the ruins there. I'm not really, I mean, I am kind of interested in like the present day current culture. Mostly I'm interested in past cultures. And I think I kind of like ruins because you can look at them and say, well, at least I'm doing better than them.
All right. Well, I got a lot of
New Orleans. Sorry, I have a question arising from that. Did you say New Orleans?
He said ruins.
Oh, ruins. I thought you said New Orleans.
So did I at first. I
All
right. And I was thinking New Orleans is a ruin?
Actually, yeah, pretty much.
It will be pretty soon with global warming. But anyway, so I got a couple things to say about, first of all, what Rob just said. Rob, I fully hear where you're coming from about ruins, right? When I traveled in Britain, and the first time I went down to Cornwall used to be, it's a county, okay, in the far west of Britain. And Cornwall used to be where 90% of the world's tin came from. So the landscape used to chug with all these tin mines, and there's these great big smokestacks coming out of the landscape on all the not all the hilltops, but hilltops here and there where the mines are. And there used to be these big wheelhouses, and all that shit is falling down and crumbling down, unless they spend a lot of money to build it back up for the tourists and whatever. But there's ruins fucking everywhere, and it gives the landscape this sort of feel to it, which gives me goosebumps just talking about it, right? I mean, it's very cool. And when I've been to Rome as well, there's plenty of ruins. You can walk through ancient Rome. I mean, you're literally walking right in the middle of fucking ancient Rome. And I'm not kidding when I say it's right there in the middle of this modern city. You know what I mean? Like, there's Rome from 2,000 years ago, and then there's Rome right now all around it.
Nobody in America knows what that means unless they've been outside of America to a place that's older than this. Nobody here.
I didn't. I respect that because I sure didn't. Right. It's my favorite thing about going to Europe, and I would love to go to Asia for the same reason. You know. But anyway, so also, Rob, I had similar things on my when I was a boy. I had certain goals I wanted to achieve, and one was to own a Corvette, which I did, and one was also to jump out of a plane, which I did. And another one was to be a radio DJ, which I did.
Nice.
Time for a new bucket list.
And well, this is when I was a kid, right? This is when I was a kid. And the one thing on my list when I was a kid that I thought would be the easiest thing turned out to be the hardest thing in my life. And that is to find like a life partner, you know, someone who's going to love me for who I am. And that's going to be okay for the duration. You know,
That's why it was
pretty lucky right now that I've got that. You know, so for me, the rest
Agreed.
is gravy. Quite frankly, I never thought I'd live past the year 2000 because I thought we would nuke each other by now. You know, so,
finding somebody and being in like in a stable, lifelong, like long-term relationship should never be on a list. Ever. Because then it makes it harder to find. And then you put pressure on yourself. And then when it doesn't happen on the time scale you want it to happen on, then you blame yourself. No.
That's what
I
I said.
might actually argue on the side of Deb for that, you know.
I want to say, in point of fact as well, I want to say too, I mean, I fully respect where you guys are coming from, Joe and Kazum and the rest who are saying about how you don't want to have a bucket list for the reasons that you stated. I won't reiterate. But I used to never have a bucket list for, I don't know, up until maybe 5 or 10 years ago. But more like 5 years ago. But it occurs to me there are certain things that it's not that I'll feel like a failure or anything if I don't accomplish them. And because the way I've approached my entire life ever since I was very young was to live without having regrets. I want to be able to die at any moment and look back on my life and go, okay, well, made some mistakes, but fair enough, here we are. And this is cool because I like me, you know? And so that's sort of how I approach living. And so I can't really regret if I don't do the things I put on my bucket list because there's no possible way I could do everything I aspire to do anyway. But having a list of certain things that I will be angry at myself if I let myself miss them. Here's number one. Every 12 years, there's a gathering in India called the Kumbh Mela. And anywhere between 25 and 30 million people gather at the convergence of the two of the three holy rivers. And they all basically baptize themselves. Although, of course, they don't use that word. But literally, it lasts for about a month. And on the peak weekend, which is the third weekend of the 4, there's usually about 25 million people in one place, all for the same reason, which is spiritual cleansing. All right. And
that would be amazing.
I want to know what it feels like to be in a crowd of people who are all there for that purpose, you know, plus
that would be amazing.
I want to know the logistics. Where do 25 million people eat, sleep, take a shit if they're all in the same place?
In the
consider your river baptism a second time.
Yeah, I want to go on the first. I want to go on the first day.
Yeah,
Just
right.
baptize yourself upstream, okay? That's all I'm trying to say.
The logistics.
Scientifically speaking,
I mean, they start planning the next Kumbh Mela the minute the last Kumbh Mela ended. You know what I mean? Because it's the one every 12 years, and I can't even imagine what it feels like to be in a crowd that big. The biggest crowd I've ever been in was when I went on the march to oppose the Iraq War a month before the Iraq War started. And there was about 2 million of us in the streets of London. And for a minute there, we let ourselves believe that we might actually make the fucking difference because no one ever saw a march that big in the whole world ever. I would like to quantify the what's it called? The group hysteria. I'd like to be able to quantify the group hysteria effect of a crowd that focused, that size. Right.
because
bring that
as a known phenomena, you only need something, as comparatively small as 10, 20,000 in a stadium to actually completely change perceptions. Yeah. So how many? 12 million?
25 million people.
25 million people. That
Yeah.
is a heck of a lot of quantum perceptuality going on.
That's
See,
bigger
I
than,
know. That's why I want to be there.
that's
Yeah,
bigger
but
than
Paul,
all of Los Angeles and surrounding areas. Like
hey, Paul, the reason what made me kind of get rid of the list is there was something that I had on my list that it came to the acceptance that I would never get to do it. Because two things I've wanted to do since I was a child, and I will want to do on the last moment of my life. Well, two things. One is actually not impossible still. In fact, it's probably more likely now than ever any other time in my life. Is to go into space.
that would be freaking cool. I would
Because now you can kind of do that for about 50 grand.
50 grand. What are you talking about? It's like 150 grand. Get
Well,
on
even
up there
then-
with Virgin Galactic and get your kind of outer
Even
space.
then.
Yeah,
If I-
but these days you can do it virtually. So okay, first
but I want to
experience.
go. I want to leave, the Earth and be up there. And Suzanne and I have actually talked about it. She's like, if you want to do it, I mean, we literally could afford, even at 150, we could do it. It would be a big imposition, but we could do it.
Less than a house.
Then I probably would do it. Yes.
So that may happen. But the other one is I've always wanted to go to another planet, even if the moon.
That would be sweet.
I count the moon or any moon as another planet, and that's never going to happen in my lifetime.
Right. Yeah, we're born in the wrong generation for that. So I just want to finish my list real quick here. So my other thing, and this is an easy one, is I want to go someplace where there's a volcano going gurgle, 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 spouting up fucking orange lava. I want to be right there looking at the lava, feeling perfectly safe. But I mean, I know Mount Etna in Sicily tends to blow like 2/3 of the days out of the year. Right. And I would love to go to Sicily probably, or maybe Hawaii, and watch a killer bird gurgling at the moment, I think.
I would feel one of the things that I actually have like great fear of are natural phenomena, because of all the things to have a fear of in the world, that is uncontrollable and disastrous to humanity, right? Like tornadoes, volcanoes, earthquakes, they just wreak
They're the
havoc.
most rational things to fear.
Well, as it turns out, those are the things that I fear greatly. And I am literally listening to you saying this going, Jesus God is standing, like, you know how you see in Hawaii where people watch the lava flows? I'm like, that would be so horrifying, but I would do it, right? Because I'm like I'm scared of many things, but I like to believe myself a person that while many things are scary and they might be terrifying and I might die from them, I also don't want to be the person that lives going, gosh, it would have been cool if I had experienced that thing. So I will do the thing despite all of the fears, right? You just have to go forward, put your hand in the box, young Atreides.
Yeah, right.
And do the thing, right?
I from a safe distance, and I want to, I don't want to die from the fumes or anything like that. But I have this like fantasy, I guess. That's maybe the wrong word, but something like that. I have this imagination that if I'm standing at the foot of a volcano and I'm looking at it, it's going gurgle, gurgle, gurgle. I'm going to connect with something very fucking primal. That I don't know why I think that, but I really feel that way, and I really
will, because it's profound. Like even the idea of it is profound. I mean, I think that's amazing.
Well, I really want to. I mean, it might not happen, right? I might go there and go, "Oh, look, that's pretty," like and then that would be it, and that would be a bit of a disappointment. But like Joseph,
Niagara Falls,
get to the thing and then find out it's an anticlimax. But I would rather know. I would rather that's one fantasies that I would rather have as a reality than a fantasy. Sometimes the fantasy is better left as a
fantasy,
or a random spit of lava just happens to land on your foot.
I suppose my number 3 would be to probably to when it comes to travel, there's so many places I want to see. Obviously, I said the Kumbh Mela already, but my whole life, I've wanted to see the pyramids and the ancient Egypt for myself. And I don't know how safe that is these days, even without COVID. I don't really know. I haven't looked into it for such a long time, but I really wanted to take my kids there when my kids were growing up, but I was always too poor to do that.
You ever see pictures of like you see pictures of the pyramids close up all the time? Do you ever see where it's taken back a little bit? Like the pyramids are in the middle of slums. Like
they are. Yeah, they are.
It's just, but you never see that because it's always very creative photography. But
they take it from the slums facing out instead of facing back.
Yeah. Can I ask you guys a question with regards to travel? Are you done? Sorry, are you done, Goth? I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so with regards to travel, this is a thing that I freaking experience all the time. Okay, so like one of the places I also would love to see up there with the Netherlands, I would love to see the ancient Greek forums, for example, where they did the debates and the Oracle of Delphi and the Acropolis. Like I would love to see all that cool stuff. One of the things I experience though all the time, like another thing I'd also like to do is like musicians, classical musicians, a tour of their homes in Austria, essentially, because so many of them went to Austria and studied there. So I would love to go. So here's something that people always tell me is that, well, it's not actually that big of a deal. It's kind of boring, bloody, blah. And I guess that like whenever somebody tells me that, like, this isn't that big of a thing to go and see. There's not that much there. It's just somebody's little house. It's like a 20-minute tour or whatever. I always feel frustrated by that because I think to myself, the coolness in seeing this has nothing to do with what has been advertised. It only has to do with what my personal connection is to that thing. And if I think that seeing, for example, a volcano freaking leaking lava down the side because it's kind of having this minor eruption or whatever. If I think that's profound, who are you to tell me that, but go see Marshmallow the DJ at his underground rave that he's got to be having because woohoo, lights and ecstasy or something, right? Like, who are you to tell me that, right? Like,
I mean, I get where you're coming from. I mean,
people doing that to you, though, being like, if you want to go see something that isn't like the Eiffel Tower, people are like, well, it's not that cool.
Well, see, the thing is, I mean, I don't really, but see, the thing is, I generally don't give a shit about what people.
Well, I don't either. I mean, I do what I'm going to do.
So, for that matter, is like most of the things I like to do are generally not I don't like the touristy things because I know a lot of the touristy things are fake.
Yeah, exactly.
Manufactured, and so people like said, like New York City, people go to Manhattan and they go to Lord and Taylor's and do a couple other touristy things, and they think they know New York is like, and they don't know what it's like to actually live, what it's like to actually be there. Like one of my favorite things of all my trips to England, for instance, was in 2008. Suzanne was working. I was bored. I was kind of like, London was pissing me off, and I got on a train and I went to Brighton, and I went to a restaurant that Gordon Ramsay had tried to help, and then I ended up walking down the street to a free house. Ryan and Paul knows what that means, and just like hanging out, and I just like struck up a conversation with some locals, and I got some really good bar food. That was like good Thai food at a pub, which was shocking. And some good beer and just talking to some locals, and that was like the most fun part of the whole trip for me.
By the way, England literally needs more Mexican food because when I was in London, I was able to find one kind of like Azteca knockoff that wasn't even open. Like, right. What?
Well, for me, the connection was I connected with locals and met people. Like if I just did go the plastic tour, I never would meet any actual locals. They would have been putting on the face for the tourists. But I actually got to talk to real people, and to me, that was the most meaningful part of the trip.
It makes you wonder why
having lived in
travel.
Yeah, I got to tell you something. I want to jump into this one because I'll tell you what, my experience, especially from living in Korea or even in Taiwan, I'll go to that example. When I went on my first trip, I didn't stay at the hotels. I had friends. I had connections. I think the best way to live somewhere is if you have connections to people that are from that country, because not only are you going to get the authentic experience, but I met the families of these friends that I had been helping with, tutoring, etc. I introduced them to my culture. I got an introduction to theirs. And I have to tell you something. That was the best experience I've ever had. That's what made me want to go back. With being in with and even with living in Korea, same idea. Everybody wanted to do the typical things, or all the teachers wanted to be with each other. I said, screw that. I'm going busted outside the bubble. I did my thing. I mean, and they I think they kind of got jealous of me because I was able to collect all the friends that they did, but that's not the point. I went to see, if I'm going to be there like for a year and a half, then dang it, I'm going to go experience it.
Right. Brian, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I would agree with absolutely everything that Angel right here has just said.
You started to say something about Brighton.
Yeah, having lived in Brighton, I can absolutely 100% confirm the dual mask of that particular city. And yes, to actually know or to get a taste of the Brightonian experience, yeah, sit in a pub, talk to a couple of locals. They will be honest with you, even to the point of showing their bigotries. You know, as long as you are equally honest back, otherwise they will treat you as a tourist.
Well, and that was the thing. One thing the people I was talking with, they were like, they wanted to come to the States, but and I said, oh, well, just do this, and then they were like, dude, like, we can't afford that. What the fuck's wrong with you? Like, you Americans, you think you have money and you do them. Like, oh no, it's a valid point. It's a good like wake up call.
Yeah,
but they were like,
for many of them it is.
But they were like, what the fuck are you doing here? I'm like, to meet you. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know though. I mean, I've traveled some places, but I didn't just, spend a couple of bucks and go somewhere. Like, that was a planned out thing that required months of planning, if not years, right? Like, to save the money, to get the places, to...
Yeah, but I would also say that there is an awful lot of value in Angel Writer's approach. Because,
no, that's for sure.
Because
well, when I was
there is a difference. There is a distinct difference between going to Paris, as I have, and sitting in the old city, drinking coffee at the, at a thing, and actually spending 3 months living in a barn conversion with a farmer bringing you daily cheese and this hooch that he's been brewing under his sink for the last 10 years.
Well, I'm ashamed to say, right?
Time, to percolate, so I guess I'd be willing to taste that hooch, but it sounds kind of like jet fuel.
They call it, they literally call it the water of life, and it really is.
I'm ashamed to say that I was in the UK for 31 years. I traveled to Wales several times, but I hardly ever went north of Sheffield, and I've never been to Scotland. 31 years.
And you never went to Scotland? I mean, it's like 2 hours away.
I was ashamed of myself for not going. I really want to go to Edinburgh. There's so many things I want to see in Edinburgh.
Edinburgh,
and Scotland in general. And Scotland, Brian, is a place where I would definitely want to have that authentic local experience. Because if you get away from Edinburgh and Glasgow and go out into real Scotland, I have friends who are Scottish, and God, it's fucking gorgeous up there.
Yeah, and it's the only place we have in the whole of our islands where you have some real geography.
Right.
It's interesting.
With the exception of
friends, I've got to wrap up the broadcast, and we can talk more in the after show. All right. So I want to thank all the guests for being active on the sidelines, and it was quite comical earlier where there were several people impersonating each other and whatever. And I'm glad we didn't get into all that with them over there. Let them do their thing. But I want to thank everybody, whether you participated in the side channel. And obviously, thanks to all my guests on and off camera. Tommy, thank you for coming tonight, man. It's really good that you came on screen for a change, man.
Yeah, but
I had that day off. I'll be on.
Oh, I send you links all the time, my friend, so you are always welcome. And anytime you want to come on and show us, if you're brave enough to put your face next to mine, Tommy.
My pretty face.
My pretty face.
My pretty face.
Actually, I'm a little weirded out that Tommy from the Bronx basically made 0 comments about New York City and its geography and that entire conversation. Not one fucking.
That's because I live in Connecticut.
What in the hell?
Anyway, wave goodbye to the lovely audience, my friends.
All right, I'm waving.